Welcome back. For those of you that joined us at 9:45, this is the continuation of the work session special meeting. It is 1 p.m. We are called to order. Joining us this morning is Kristen Green from Northwest COG QQ, or NWCC OGQQ.
So that's your acronym for the rest of the day, right?
And thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Do I need to do anything to this mic?
No,
Great.
Great.
Thank you. So as Commissioner Woodruff said, my name is Kristen Green. For the benefit, if anyone's listening, I'm here on behalf of Northwest Colorado Council of Governments, Northwest COG, the Water Quality and Quantity Committee, and because that is so long, we do frequently abbreviate to just QQ. So again, thank you for having me today. I am fairly new to the QQ team. I started at the end of last year. And continuing with long titles, I'm the Policy Advisor and Member Services Manager, really sort of shifting into the director role that Tori Jarvis has filled most recently in the past. I'll still be working with her and others closely moving forward. I'll start with just giving kind of an overview, introduction of who QQ is and what we do. I know multiple of you are familiar with our work, which is always great to hear. And then I'll be sort of shifting in and spending the most time on a legislative update, just because of the timeliness of that and the fact that it is the legislative session. And I'm also kind of point on legislative affairs for QQ. And again, I like to mention, just for context, I live in Kremling, so I'm based in Grand County, so always appreciate the chance to be here and visit. So a bit of an overview. QQ started in the late 70s, sort of amid increasing pressure around Trans Mountain diversions, particularly for Front Range municipalities, as well as sort of percolating water quality concerns and issues from kind of legacy mining across the headwaters. And so the overarching goal of QQ to this day was really to form an entity that could present a united headwaters voice in various decision-making forums. In that vein, in terms of being united, we do operate by consensus, which means, we only can take or have positions if all of our members support and agree with that position. Our membership includes 6 counties, of course. Those are Routt, Grand, Eagle, Pitkin, of course, Summit, and Gunnison, as well as the town of Carbondale. The rest of our 47 municipalities are within those 6 counties. We also have 4 associate members, and that includes the Colorado River District. Associate essentially means they're not like a voting or participatory member in that way. And one thing I also like to mention, because I know this is different from how other entities work, is any staff or official from a member entity can attend the QQ meetings, weigh in on positions, engage in that way. And I'll go ahead and mention the next QQ member meeting is on March 13th, which is a Friday, and it's going to be taking place at the Glenwood Springs Library, as well as a Zoom option. So there'll be more details going around that, but I wanted to mention, since it's a little closer to you than some of our others have been. So again, in terms of the areas that we focus on with QQ, our structure in representing our members and sort of getting that approval from our board and others, is we have a consultant team that comprises technical, legal, policy expertise that sort of carries out this annual scope of work that's approved by the QQ board and our members. And that scope of work really focuses on kind of 5 broad areas. The first is the Colorado legislature, and I mentioned I'm going to save that to the end so I can spend a bit more time there. And I also want to stress, please feel free to sort of jump in at any time with questions or input or anything along those lines. So the second area is state and federal rulemaking. So this is where QQ is a party in different administrative procedures on behalf of QQ's members. I'd say probably the most recent example of that is the dredge and fill rulemaking. I believe it was Reg 87 was the number with the Water Quality Control Commission. That commission is by far and away the agency we're most frequently engaging on rulemakings with. For those that don't know, the dredge and fill rulemaking was essentially it's Colorado's what's the word I'm trying to think of? Aim is to sort of fill in oversight around water project permitting that was historically overseen more by the federal government, and sort of filling in with waters that may no longer be sort of federally recognized under the Clean Water Act is now occurring under the state regulatory arm to essentially sort of assure that the same level of kind of protection and rigor around permitting is occurring across Colorado state waters. Third overview is litigation. Again, we have general counsel sort of that works and is always on board with QQ, and again, that includes Tori Jarvis as well as Barbara Green. No affiliation, unfortunately, with me, or no relation, I should say. We're obviously affiliated now. But anyway, Barbara in particular has been with QQ, I believe, since the inception. And just on that front, for a bit more context, litigating around 1041 regulations. So this is local authority to sort of oversee and govern areas and activities of state interests. QQ's around that formation was heavily involved in sort of litigating and confirming that local governments had the ability to provide oversight and permitting with large-scale water projects in particular. So that's been sort of a key authority to maintain and protect moving forward within QQ. And actually this sort of questions around 1041 and how we engage with that is something that is also percolating in the legislature some, and I'll talk more about. Last couple I'll sort of group together is one, this ongoing policy making. So this is just continuing to sort of engage in less formal sort of state decision making in particular, not necessarily a rule making. So for example, I've been involved in the Strategic Growth Report, which is an effort being led by Department of Local Affairs, DOLA, that was prompted by state legislation, I believe, in 23, that, as the name suggests, it's sort of trying to facilitate and coordinate, I would say, more strategic and sustainable growth and development across the state. And for QQ's interest and involvement, that includes sort of a water supply and availability arm. So looking at that perspective, and especially being sure that even supply on Front Range growth is sort of adequately considering the source of that supply and impacts headwater communities, and that's a part of like regional planning with these measures. And then lastly is the technical and legal support. This is fairly ongoing. Our staff is available to review projects and permits to see if they have compliance with the 208 plan, which is a regional water quality plan under the Clean Water Act. QQ and Northwest COG are sort of the regional entity that sort of administers and drafts that plan for this region. And then also, you know, anytime an entity wants to update their regulations or is doing any kind of planning around water and quality sort of needs, we're always available to provide input or support as part of kind of your membership dues and what we offer. So I'm going to shift now into the legislature, but I'd love to pause if folks have comments or thoughts.
So Patty,
Yeah, it was a great update, because QQ originally started out just for 208 plans, and then it evolved. So, yeah, you kind of ended where we kind of began, which is interesting. So I really appreciate your taking the time to come over and bring us back up to speed.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Kelly.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah,
Thank
you as well.
I'm wondering if you are hearing any threats to undermine 1041 powers.
Yeah, that's a great somewhat segue into the legislature. So there's been a lot of chatter, conversation, and focus around renewable energy project development at the state legislature, and in particular expressed interest for the state administration in sort of having more of a state role in that process, with sort of the perspective that the state needs to be increasing renewable energy development, that we need to have efficiency in that process, and things in that vein. And so the reason I bring that up in response to your question is sort of QQ's key concern with that has been like, what does it mean to have an increased state role when this is something that's clearly in that 1041 purview? And in fact, many local governments already have regulations around renewable energy development, and in some instances have sought to sort of modify or even deny a project. This has particularly been the case with some of the eastern slope counties in terms of what's received some attention in the news. And so, again, our perspective would always be that, like, a project being modified or denied is not a reason to shift the regulation. And particularly from a water project perspective, that argument's been out there for a long time, right? And so it would be really concerning precedent to set if we were to sort of try to sidestep that local government piece. So in terms of like where, if there will be sort of an overt or tangible threat around like introduced legislation, that is yet to occur. But again, I'm hearing along with others, or we're hearing that industry in partnership, I believe, with some folks at the administrative are still working on a renewable energy permitting bill of some kind. And certainly as it was addressed in the State of the State last month, I guess that was, time is funny, this idea that there's reason to sort of be vigilant in the 1041 component, I would say. And then more broadly, I wouldn't say that there's reason to feel threatened by it, but it is, in spaces it does come up in water, as well as sort of citing 1041 as something that adds, red tape, it slows permitting, all of those kinds of things. And so we are always quick to ensure that that kind of language isn't ending up in something like a strategic growth report or even sort of guiding agency policy. I was like, does that address some of your...
Sure. Yeah, thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
the update.
Can you touch, it sounds like you want to go through some stuff.
No,
but,
I'm happy to.
Does the rescission of the endangerment finding have a nexus with water or something you're not tracking?
That's not something I'm tracking. I would love to hear more. Maybe we should be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
then
that just happened today?
And then I guess I'll switch to microgrids and data centers in 1030, and sort of, again, county nexus clearly with water. So I'd love to hear your views on both bills, potentially how we can destroy one and enhance the other, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which should be self-explanatory, but destroy the data center bill and promote the microgrid bill.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say the microgrid bill is something that I've been following less. I know it's on Northwest COG's radar.
Yeah.
And so would also be happy to sort of connect with whomever, either your legislative folks or theirs, to kind of get more up to speed there. But in terms of data centers, yes, that's an issue we're absolutely tracking. So far, there's one bill introduced that was slated for committee on Thursday, but apparently
Postponed.
someone flagged that hearing has now been either canceled or postponed. So
Canceled.
yeah, unclear. That bill, though, to give an overview, was essentially an incentivization bill. So it established, I believe, a state commission was the word they used, that would sort of have the authority to provide kind of incentives through tax breaks and other mechanisms to data centers. The sort of philosophy being if they met kind of certain standards around water and energy use. QQ sent out earlier this week a recommended position of opposing that bill, primarily because while the commission, it lists, sort of needing to have water incentives as part of it, in terms of like who was conducting an overview of available supply, that was really limited to the provider where the data center would be located. So there was concern around if that's really providing adequate safeguards around water use, and particularly like increased demand and where that water would be sourced, and potentially sort of encouraging future Trans Mountain diversions. It was also clear in that language that in the absence of a water provider, bringing forth that kind of assessment, the commission also had the authority to sort of move forward without it. So again, in sum, our overall feeling was sort of, it felt very premature to be offering incentives for something that, one, not all local governments have had a chance to sort of think through how they want to regulate, what makes sense for their community, those pieces. And more broadly, there's a lot of sort of data transparency issues with data center water and energy use that sort of goes in tandem of really understanding what those impacts are and what it can mean for communities, both where these data centers would be sited, which would likely be, along the Front Range, but also, again, for the demand it places on other communities that are the source of water and energy infrastructure, right? On one hand, we're sort of articulating that renewable energy development should be happening faster, the state should get involved, but then also potentially incentivizing like significant demands on our energy use and grids. So again, that was House Bill 1030, I believe was the number. And then more broadly, there's anticipated, or I think almost definitely, additional legislation moving forward on data centers. It hasn't been introduced, but there's a draft circulating with sort of a larger stakeholder community that really seeks to focus on kind of the environmental impact of data centers, particularly, again, regarding energy and water use. I myself just saw the draft legislation this morning. I don't know if others have seen it. I haven't had a chance to closely review. Again, that's something that QQ will be paying significant attention to. And I think, again, stressing that, yes, aside from being sure we're regulating against environmental impacts, that like preserving the local government authority within that is paramount. So that other kind of thoughts or questions or comments around data center stuff, to use the technical term.
I guess there's an overriding concern that we're incentivizing big business, and yet if we're really pushing for renewables, why wouldn't we incentivize microgrids the same way?
Yeah, I
So
think
that was the nexus between the two. And the concern is that both the solar siting bill as well as the AI data center bill seem like they're just big business friendly and favor consumption over natural resources. So
yeah, I appreciate that point. And again, I've been less involved with microgrid, so it's helpful for me to think about that nexus more clearly.
thank you. Kelly.
I think I just wanted to, I'm going to pivot a little and just take a moment to see how familiar you are with Picken County's interaction in the water space. We have a whole Healthy Rivers program. We have a dedicated sales tax. We've, been very engaged in a number of ways in our watershed. We sit on the RWAPA board as a, also founding member of that. So I just wasn't sure if it's helpful for us also to share with you some of what we're doing, what we work on here. I think you'll maybe come to observe that sometimes Pickens County can be the stick that prevents QQ from getting to consensus at times. And, and I think we're okay with that, profile. And, it hasn't held anything up materially that I think our other member groups have really struggled with. But, we have a lot of collaboration with reintroduction of beavers and, healthy watersheds involving beaver populations. And so I just wanted to kind of alert some of that to your attention as well.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I mean, in terms of how much I know, I'm certain it's not as much as you all do. I am aware of the Healthy Rivers program, and actually I met with Lisa Tasker yesterday, which was really great just to connect more and learn more about that work, in particular some of the work around beaver reintroduction. And I have to say the brochure pamphlet was some of the best public outreach material I have ever seen. It was awesome. And again, I think it's so commendable that Pickens County does have that type of program that does have sort of that identified funding source. So again, I'm aware of it. I would by no means say though that I'm aware enough to sort of identify all the ways that coordination can happen. And I think it'd be wonderful to think through that more. In terms of some of the unique dynamics with, I'll say, the Roaring Fork watershed, I'm familiar with some of the considerations around the Shoshone water rights acquisition, what that means for the Cameo Call, and of course what that means for water flowing down the Roaring Fork. I was chatting with Tori, our legal person who's point on this, earlier in the week, and again, I think our emphasis there is that similarly, we would only want to maintain the historic flow regime, and I'm aware that Pickens County is its own, and probably some of the municipalities as well are their own kind of party in that proceeding as well. And so those are some of the issues I'm aware of way longer ago than I probably think. Just as a side note, I was a raft guide in Glenwood and spent a few seasons in the area. And actually the upper Frying Pan Valley, above Rudai, is I would say my favorite, just river and riparian area in the state. I camped there for 2 weeks every year as a kid. I grew up in Oklahoma. That was the big trip. And they were formative experiences for me, obviously. So not something that's necessarily increasing my expertise, but I do, for being in Kremling, have decent, at least on the ground understanding, not the expertise you all have.
Well, no, that's okay. I just wanted to,
yeah.
While you're here in Pickens County,
no, I appreciate it, and again, would love to stress that if there's other ways we can be coordinating or engaging, that's great.
Is there something we should know about the American Whitewater Bill and Hattie and Julie's bill that they presented at QQ the last meeting?
Yeah, great question. So that's referring to this potential stream access legislation. Imagine you folks have seen various sort of coverage around that. I chatted with Hattie, who's sort of running point of that coalition for American Whitewater, a couple of weeks ago. It sounds like, conversations are still happening, particularly in looking at potential bill sponsors and working with them. I think it's an issue that folks are really interested in. There's also strong feelings and visceral reactions of opposition. I think unclear if something will be introduced this year. There's a desire, to not introduce something that then sort of causes regression on the issue. If something were to be introduced, I believe it's fair to say it would be focused solely on right to float, not including provisions around wading and fishing access.
So narrow or abstract. Sorry, Kelly.
Yeah.
That's okay. You can, if you had more questions on that.
Good.
Okay. I just wanted to draw your attention to maybe some additional resources. So, you know, our next presentation we're going to hear is related to our comprehensive plan. And, you know, we've really tackled water availability in that more than I think we have before. And I know that QQ has always had an education component as well to trying to provide resources to its members about how best to do planning and, you know, things like that. So I just would maybe draw that to your attention. And then also, you know, over here we have an organization called Aspen Journalism that has a water desk. And, you know, this is a media nonprofit that focuses on, you know, reporting and journalism, but they do have an aspect of that specific focus of water issues in the West. And, you know, it might be a resource for you too.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And I think Heather's at QQ meetings generally. Heather Sackett.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, further questions for Kristen? Excellent.
Only to say
Really
thank you, and I'm impressed. In the short time you've gotten there,
Oh.
you've got a lot of depth.
Thank you.
And this whole idea about having to reach consensus, you think would hobble any organization, but QQ manages to get good work done and advocate and keep them all together. So
Yeah.
good thing. It'd be great if we could figure out how to propagate our healthy rivers idea throughout the other counties in the headwaters.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's a great example of, again, sort of a fairly local funding source that has really, I'd say watershed, because it extends beyond Pitkin County in terms of the work you're doing, correct? Right?
We're
That's
in
the source.
watershed, yeah.
Yeah, so again, that sort of watershed approach is, I agree, something that's really awesome and great to see. And I know I'd love to see it where I live more. So appreciate that.
Patty for Kristen.
Yeah, real quick, it's my understanding we recently, Northwest COG itself contributed to QQ some funds for like a legal defense fund. And I tried to bring the board, which was something new, but something we realized we'll probably need more funding in the future, but it's
Yes.
becoming such an issue.
Yeah, so that's a great point. So what I believe you're referring to is this year, Northwest COG, you know, it's sort of the big entity that is somewhat separate from QQ, made a sort of one-time contribution for this year of, I believe, $150,000 to the legal defense fund, which this is something that QQ sort of oversees and manages with its member and board. But yes, it's essentially to sort of shore up additional legal resources that may either extend beyond the QQ scope or the typical legal resources. So yes, there's been, thanks to Northwest COG, some, what's the word I'm trying to think of, an
It's money
infusion into
Yeah, it was
that.
money that came from the elevator program. So
Yes.
it's money that we can use for other purposes, and we decided it would be helpful to jurisdictions to have a fund if they were caught up in something that they could get some legal assistance. So
Yeah.
I'm glad we were able to do that.
Me
for
too,
the
yeah, that was
organization.
very exciting.
Last
Just
quality
an-
and quantity
An
question.
addendum to that is that QQ had a legal defense fund for quite a while, and as I understand, it hadn't ever been tapped. So there was a chunk of money just sitting there for quite a while. We had a debate at QQ about it last spring when I was still vice chair.
Okay.
And it was, is it necessary to expand something we haven't used? I think out of the abundance of caution, apparently it was. But still, it's not like something that's been tapped a lot. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes.
Yeah, I appreciate that
Yeah.
historical context, not that that's that long ago. And yeah, that I'll make sure to sort of chat with
It'd be
Tori
good
and
to know,
Barbara.
yeah, because you can always tap the membership when you need the money too, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
But
no,
it's nice to have it in the bank. I agree with that.
yeah, no, I fully hear where you're coming from. And again, I think it was in part just response to the opportunity with the elevator program, but I am hearing just like thinking through those resources and how they can be allocated and when could be merit
and
sort of further thinking.
It
for
had been a long
QQ.
time since it had been increased to a reasonable level, so it does make sense.
But yeah, that's very helpful context and input though. Thank you.
Kristen, any wrap-up comments? Would you like some wolves to take with you?
some.
That was a grand.
Beaver,
County
do we have
joke.
beaver?
Yeah. I see what I got excited. I thought you meant like you had like a wolf plush toy or something. Oh my God.
Calendar, you can give me a calendar.
No,
Calendar.
yeah, no, I mean, I have the beaver brochures, so that's really all you need. No, I appreciate it. I guess I would add, if you have other members on your staff that should be receiving, in particular, like our legislative communication, our list can be filtered down so that folks just receive those kinds of updates. So particularly if you have staff or lobbyists that you'd like us to be coordinating with, let me know.
Does
Yeah,
Levi
crazy.
receive this?
I'll make sure you get Levi Borst's contact information, and appreciate your updates this week.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
I run upstairs and get Kristen an extra beaver hat.
Okay.
I have on my
I was
desk.
thinking
An
the
open
same
space
thing.
calendar.
Back.
Pink or camo?
It's pink camo.
See? Yeah.
Pink and white camo.
Amazing.
So I'll go get
Don't
that
go
for
anywhere.
you.
She'll be down in just a sec.
Awesome.
Excellent. Thank you.
No,
for-
I'm going to stay for the
Yeah.
comprehensive plan. Thank you so much.
Likewise,
Thank you.
Kristen, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
You too.
So next up, we have Suzanne Wolf, Hannah Hunt Wander, Ellen Sassano, Nicole Rebeck Stout, and Jessica Garrow.
Ellen, thank you for those
The office.
pictures that you sent.
You are welcome.
I still have a couple of those around my place. That was really fun.
So fun, yeah.
And we have room at the dais and power.
And Patty, I have dollars for you. Okay, however we want to work it, it's fine.
Okay.
I just remembered I hadn't
Hello.
sent you that.
Hello, hi again.
2 days in a row.
2 days in a row.
You did a great job last night.
Thank you, thank you. It's nice to appreciate to
Put the
see
others to
all of what's
shame.
going on in one group,
It
it's
was
helpful.
powerful, succinct, and comprehensive.
I hope there's more questions and discussion at this.
I know.
Maybe
We're going to
not.
provide
No,
the
you covered it all
opportunity.
last night. We're done. We're good.
Yeah, so,
Thank you. I'm gonna pull up.
yeah. So Hannah Hunt and I are going to tag team the presentation this afternoon, and I'm going to start knowing that you did have a great brief overview of the comprehensive plan policies and process last night at your joint meeting with City Council. We're going to provide a little more detail, but recognizing that there's not a lot of time on the agenda, we want to make sure that there's time this afternoon for questions and discussion. Because there really wasn't any of that last night, right? So as soon as Hannah Hunt's ready, we'll just move to this screen, which sorry, I'm on the wrong screen here. Basically, the purpose of this afternoon's item is to give you another quick comp plan process recap to start with, and then to cover the comp plan policy overview by touching on community goals, broad community direction, existing and new policies by chapter, and then we'll wrap up with next steps. So you've seen this slide before. All the work that's been done to date has been grounded in the community values established by the Community Growth Advisory Committee and affirmed by the Board of County Commissioners. And again, you've seen this, but those policies or goals are to implement bold climate action while balancing our economy, preserving our rural and wild lands, and supporting an equitable and affordable community. Not too much to ask, right? So the comprehensive plan update is the first step in the process to implementing the Vision 2050 community goals, right? And we've gone through 4 phases. We're actually at that far right column now in terms of action, but we started in that first column, 01, to establish where we are now, to establish existing conditions as a baseline for where we go from here, right? And as part of that first phase, we evaluated existing conditions. It's the first chapter in the comp plan, we created a robust data baseline, thanks to Hannah Hunt, and initiated community outreach and a community survey right from the get-go. And also, we established a work group comprised of most members of the Community Growth Advisory Committee and caucus representatives were added to the mix, really to function as a steering committee to keep us on track. The next phase was to really launch into where we want to go from here. And that involved in October a community open house, focus groups, significant data research and analysis, intensity studies really to look at some of the assumptions that the CGAC made about intensity associated with large homes that were really mostly proven out as a result of those intensity studies. We also had a water conditions report prepared by a consultant. All of this work, the community outreach that we started and this research was the start to establishing a policy framework for the plan, which we started to shop with the work group and the Planning and Zoning Commission. So as the third step of the phase, we came into that phase with the start of policy direction, which we then refined, again, with more work group meetings, Planning and Zoning Commission, work sessions, and more community input. Integrating the data studies, we developed an initial plan draft, right? Did really extensive community outreach, including several mapping charrettes at open houses that were well attended. We did more surveys and created a story map that we included online as reference for the general public. And then went through 5 Planning and Zoning Commission work sessions. To their credit, they endured. And we were able to come up with a final draft plan which brought us to that fourth phase, where we are today. Fortunately, we went ahead and published that final draft plan on our website on January 29th and referred the plan out to several agencies and contacts in the hope of receiving extensive comments. 30-day, roughly 3-week comment period. We met with the work group a week ago just to get them up to speed as we move forward. And here we are today meeting with you really to prep for the next step, which is the Planning and Zoning Commission public hearings for adoption, which are scheduled starting in March, on March 3rd. So again, the draft that we've pulled together is grounded in CGAC recommendations, and that's really important to reiterate. Using a data-informed process, and in my opinion, a significant, robust community engagement process to get where we are today. And this next slide is just a graphic representation of all of those pieces and parts. The work that went into developing that first draft plan on the left side of your screen, again, that CGAC report that was published in 2023, right? And then the intensity study and the water conditions report that were the next step in informing the plan development. And then on the right side of the screen, just a summary. I won't go through all of this, it's a lot of text, but a summary of the really extensive community engagement that has happened over the last 2 years, including digital and paper and radio media, in addition to many in-person events, pop-up events, and community open houses, work sessions with the Planning and Zoning Commission. We've also actually had the opportunity to meet with 6 of the caucuses in person to walk through the plan development. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Hannah Hunt just to start to walk through the plan policies. Yeah, and leave it at that unless you have any questions about just that introduction. Okay, thanks. Hannah Hunt.
Great, thanks. As we go through this, if there are questions that come up, we're welcome to kind of take those as we go. We're going to go through each of the sections in more depth than we did last night, but just want to have this be a discussion and for you all to feel familiar with the content and what is in this document. So the plan, I see some of you all have that. This draft, that's the 129 draft, is a compilation of all of the work that Ellen was describing. And then just to be clear, we had a draft that was posted at the end of August that then we ran through a series of open houses, got feedback, met with caucuses, did these work sessions with the Planning Commission, met with our work group, which was CJC members plus caucus. Caucus membership as well was a part of that, got additional public input to now be at the place where we have a draft that's posted for public comment, been referred out to caucuses, referred out to municipalities, other counties, land managers, et cetera. So we're entering into our public process to move this through adoption. And I think that, so much of this has been really intending to come back to those community values and recognizing that this is a values-driven plan coming from the CGAC recommendations, moving through the community and public process, but these values continue to ring true. Bold climate action, balanced economy, rural preservation, equity, and affordability. And those play out as well within the 4 main chapters, which is really the content, kind of the meat of the plan where the policies live. So we showed this last night, but just these are the 4 goals informed by community values, which really set the charge for each of these 4 chapters within the plan. I think one of the main pieces, and we talked through this last night, but I think that the key takeaway from this is that this plan is grounded in a lot of existing policies, and we're moving those forward through additional direction, additional studies, additional community engagement, but grounded in really long-standing values. So I think that's an important piece to just make sure that we're reiterating. We're still really working on protecting water resources and adding some additional policy aspects to be able to get at that in a more rigorous way. I will note just with Northwest COG that we had some good coordination with Tori and crew on the 208 plan, as that water management plan has been being updated. We've coordinated to make sure we're in alignment there, as well as on the quantity and supply side. So just kind of a note for making sure that we're coordinated kind of across different aspects. So we will go into these different areas in detail in the plan sections, but I think the main piece again is just water resources, environmental stewardship, managing growth, preserving and maintaining rural character continue through this plan. And continue to form kind of the basis for the policy foundation. The way that may be carried out and what's added to that is really the forward-looking piece of the way that this comprehensive plan moves us forward toward 2050. Any questions here? I know there's a lot on the slide, and I'm happy to stop here, or again, we can kind of go into more details.
It's amazing what has been accomplished, I have to say. It's impressive to see it and to see it presented so well. Yet I know that a lot of this is hard fought. There's a lot of conflicting values within this. And if you do too good a job of managing it, are you not reaching a certain mediocrity? That's my philosophical question after looking at this for so long and marveling at how you're able to make this incredible amorphous bag of ideas work together somehow. And I'm looking at Ellen, because you've been here forever and you've been going through this, and Suzanne as well. it's a philosophical question. Pardon me for asking it, but it's like my biggest fear is that we do an okay job at all these things and somehow end up with a loss of the golden goose. Isn't that, sorry, skeptical this afternoon, but you don't have to answer that right now, but that's what I'm thinking about as I look at this. And manage growth, limit exemptions to growth management, great. Manage intensity of residential development in rural areas, yet allow community housing outside the UGB. And I'll leave it right there. It's like, wait a minute, I'm having a conflict in my brain when I see that. So I'll be interested in hearing how that conversation evolved and how you're going to get us through this. Thanks.
In one word, no.
10 words or less.
And it looks as though Hannah Hunt may also want to jump in. I clearly don't have an answer to that philosophical question, but I will say that finding balance that doesn't result in mediocrity is the challenge here, right? Fully acknowledge that, and that's a challenge, but a good goal. I'll leave it at that. I wish I could come up with
that's
something.
the best I could hope for right there, but thank
Yeah.
you. But I hope we can have further the conversation.
And I'll just say, as we go through, we can speak to some of the, part of this is a policy framework. The rubber hits the road when this moves into code updates. And as a part of this process, we had, especially with the community engagement that happened this fall, a discussion around implementation and priorities for implementation. And I'll touch on some of that, which I think will, again, there's a lot going on here, but some of those priorities and how we think about that as related to, specifically some of these related to water and how we think about location of community housing and how we think about TDR. So there are some priorities that have been established that I think will help us with some of that wayfinding, but certainly there's a lot of goals that we're putting out there with this plan.
Sure. Well, I want to thank the P&Z and all of you for doing the brain damage on this for so long. Thanks.
Kelly for Hannah Hunt.
Yeah, I just want to sort of comment on what I think is, critical context is, we're in a situation where there are decision-making frameworks that some have more power than others. We have to respond to a context where certain rights are practically inalienable, right? And that's going to limit what we get to do in a decision-making framework, as opposed to as if everything were treated all equally and then we're trying to balance out what would our ideal be. And so, we're trying to be bold and push up against the things that might want to tell us no, and figure out, well, how can we get to some degree of boldness? How can we get to some degree of, pushing the values forward that we find most important, even if the world's working against us? So I think that, I just say that because that's always what I see is the trick here, is that if we had a context where we could do whatever we wanted, we'd totally be able to achieve all these values, but we can't. So we're figuring the paths forward and the tools to create to get us as close as possible.
But your point is so well taken in that being bold has been direction from the CGAC, from the Planning Commission, from you all, from the get-go. So I think that is definitely a place to start from and to keep in mind as we go forward. Great point.
Thank you.
Shall we progress? Anything
Please.
else here?
That's a great
bold?
I
page.
don't think that's a hand. I think
I
it's
love
just
that
a
page.
relaxing posture.
Yeah, I am just.
It's just a
sitting
relaxing
Where the
posture.
hand rests.
there, being relaxed.
So new policies by chapter. So what we thought would be helpful for the board is to dive into way that the policies have shifted or are new coming out of the direction from the CGAC, alignment with other community plans. That includes county plans like hazard mitigation, climate action, et cetera. County-wide recommendations from the caucus master plans, which have been a big informant to this document. Ongoing input from the work group, the intensity study findings, that was several reports that were culminated into a single white paper, state requirements, best practices. So a lot that has informed this. And just to say too, Planning Commission, they did a series of work sessions with us in the fall, but we have been meeting with them every other month for the last 2 years to go through this. So just want to acknowledge their hard work as well to be on this this effort with us. So we'll start here in the natural environment. You'll note that this is number 3. So Chapter 1 of the plan is the introduction. Chapter 2 is an existing conditions that was done a few summers ago. Chapter 3 is the first policy chapter. And within this section, this touches on natural resources and biodiversity, water, ag lands, air quality, scenic quality, public lands and open space, rec and tourism, and environmental hazards. So that's the scope of the policy sections that are within this natural environment. Again, kind of the overall thrust of this chapter comes from these different aspects that have been informed by broad direction. So preserving and protecting our natural environment, and obviously a long-standing commitment of our community. Using county regulations and programs, so both code as well as other types of programs to support the natural environment. Mitigating our impacts, both from a development standpoint as well as from a recreation standpoint, impacts to the natural environment, supporting broad partnerships for broad protections. And so much of this, I would say, that really put a fine point on a variety of aspects within the water section, within the scenic quality section, within the air quality, is coming from caucus master plans. So want to recognize that, as well as in the hazard mitigation and environmental hazards. So want to recognize the way that those caucus master plans, which are hard work from the caucuses, have informed this document as well. So the new policy direction, again, kind of the highlights within the natural environment section. So furthering our commitment to wildlife preservation and including an emphasis on migration movement corridors. There's policy language, there's an acknowledgement of the work on migration movement corridors, the mapping and work done by the Roaring Fork Watershed Biodiversity Institute has been a key partner in this. Increasing water adequacy requirements and water conservation for new and existing development. And I'll just say we recognize that water is a limiting factor, is a constraining factor for any type of development and new development. This is informed by both work with Brundle Group, who's done a water conditions report with us, coordination with Northwest COG, as well as state requirements around the water adequacy piece. I'll just note, too, that that's something that has been identified as a high priority from a community standpoint around next steps from a code implementation, and really looking at water adequacy, what county, how far kind of county can put requirements in place before there's state preemption, like around groundwater wells and such. But that's going to be, at least from the community direction, identified as a high priority to move into code updates for development across the board, across all sectors. Improving policy language regarding development impact to scenic views. Again, that's pulling through a variety of recommendations that came out of several of the caucus master plans. So that's also something that has a direct tie to code update. Reinforcing the commitment to protect public lands, especially federal public lands, and supporting coordinated resiliency planning efforts. So the resiliency code, which is the wildfire code, of course, is moving forward. That has been happening in parallel to this process, but coordination with resiliency as well as adaptive planning efforts. Incorporating wildfire has been something that is emphasized in this natural environment section. So that's a lot, and there's more in that chapter 3, but I'll pause there to see if there's any additional comments.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you for getting
Oh,
with
yeah.
Ty on that. Yeah.
It's a cool map. My
I know.
quick question was just regarding public lands, supporting public lands. Of course we do. I've been concerned about public lands and public lands being sold off to private entities lately. Has that conversation reached this group at any great level? And could you just describe it?
I would say yes. That's also been an existing land use policy about the transfer of public land ownership, kind of both directions.
Right.
So though that policy that was in the 2003 comprehensive plan has been carried forward and kind of reinforced and lives in this policy as well. And yes, we're aware of variety of commissioner kind of direction around letters in support of federal lands protection. So that has informed the direction that's in the policy language in the comprehensive plan.
Got it. And can I ask, I think that includes also just maintenance of public lands on behalf of the federal government in this case. What I'm thinking we find ourselves doing that more and more. If that's in there, I don't know. Maybe it needs to be, maybe it's can be alluded to, maybe it's not necessary. But thanks. Sorry, Ellen, I interrupted you.
No, I would just add that that Hannah Hunt did reach out to the Forest Service a while back to get their input on protection of public lands, which was helpful, and they did have some great input, which was incorporated in some of the policies in the plan. So, certainly an important element in this day and age, and we do address it. We'll take a close look to make sure that it's as thorough as it should be in terms of policy.
And if that was to Scott Fitzwilliam's previous, manager, he's still around and would be a great resource if you need to call on him today, maybe even more valuable now.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Good point.
Thanks.
So then, moving into the next, any other questions? I don't want to rush. No. Moving into the next chapter 4, the next policy-heavy chapter, the built environment. And this is a very extensive, dense chapter, in the right way, dense. And it touches on, right. Climate action in the built environment, land use, community housing, buildings, transportation and mobility, waste management, resilient infrastructure, utilities, and cultural and historic resources. So there's a lot here. And I'll start with the broad community direction that we've received with respect to the built environment. The first one being a real focal point for the CGAC to minimize and manage the intensity and community impacts of large homes, while incentivizing smaller homes and supporting our local workforce. So that's a lot right there in one statement. Standing strong on environmental protections and rural preservation. Again, both of these are long-standing goals and existing policies today that will move forward in policies. And prioritizing community housing development that meets our community values. This is, I think, as you all have alluded to a bit so far, a challenging goal, but one that is at the forefront and certainly a focal point right now. Streamlining and incorporating incentives into the land use and building codes to achieve all of these community values and goals has been our community direction thus far. So going into some detail, again, this is a snapshot. There's a lot in this chapter, but I'm going to touch upon the highlights. The first being the incorporation of policies around development and building performance standards to further climate action goals, which has been a priority for the board and the county now for a long while. We look at net zero energy, electrification, reduced energy use, and renewable energy infrastructure, amongst other things. But those are probably the highlights of the climate action goal policies. The second bullet speaks to, again, a focal point, reducing intensity in rural areas and promoting land use patterns aligned with community values. And that, after a lot of discussion over the last 2 years, has resulted in policies supporting the reduction in maximum house size, again, something that the board has generally delved into and supported over the years, providing incentives and streamlined review for small homes, and that small homes are defined in the plan as under 3,250 square feet, at least at the moment. Limiting exemptions from growth management and updating growth management quota system criteria is something that's been discussed, at least at the Planning and Zoning Commission, pretty extensively over the years, to address those intensity impacts primarily. Minimizing intensity impacts across climate, economic, and transportation sectors. And those intensity impacts do relate to large homes, but there's also been a lot of discussion about intensity impacts related to short-term rentals and special events as well in the rural areas. And then adjusting the TDR Transferable Development Rights Program, sorry for the acronym there, to maintain rural preservation as the first foremost goal, but also to minimize impacts to receiving sites. And those receiving sites typically have resulted in large homes and some of those intensity impacts. Then there's a significant amount of policy direction towards developing strategies to house our community by utilizing caretaker dwelling units. Right now, I'd say the caretaker dwelling units have been identified through our public engagement as a type of community housing that is at a scale and accomplishes a lot of our goals around housing the community and the workforce throughout the county, not everywhere, but outside of your urban growth boundaries and in the rural areas. However, it's been identified that the issue with the current caretaker dwelling units is that the deed restrictions aren't enforced, so the CDUs aren't actually accomplishing their goals to house community workforce today. So there's policy direction to that point. Prioritizing community housing within existing urban growth boundaries is a current policy and has been for a long time for the county. That is carried forward in policy, but in response to CGAC direction, there's also a desire to allow some community housing outside of the urban growth boundary areas in very limited circumstances when there is sufficient infrastructure, with water being probably the most significant limiting factor there. And then reaffirming the role of caucuses is another element that we've added to the Built Environment chapter, because there's been a lot of question about the role of the caucus master plans as they relate to the countywide comprehensive plan. And so we do have a policy statement in the plan that basically says they are both really critical and important to the community discussion around policy direction. But where there is a conflict between the two plans, the comprehensive plan is going to take priority. We just wanted to be very upfront about that. There's been a lot of question and discussion around that piece. And there's a lot here. Happy to take questions before we move on. if there are any, or comment.
I guess I'm wondering, so, these are one of the tensions, I think, like an example of the tensions at play, maybe. So,
Yeah.
a residential developer could come get a non-exempt or an exempt well permit for 3 residential structures. If someone were to come do that for, duplexes or something like that, how would that play out? We would, on the one hand, it's like, we want to have multifamily housing that meets these standards. And on the other hand, there's sort of a path to building it. Like, how would that play out under the new code?
Well, and Suzanne is here as well, but there are, zoning is still in place. So first of all, you have to have a site that can accommodate that many units, right? So that's a small factor. We are preempted at the state level in terms of their authority to issue well permits, but we do have some ability to regulate, and I'm going to actually let Hannah Hunt jump in here, but regulate how that water is used, that to make sure that wet water is available, so do you want to jump in on this one, or Suzanne, do you want to jump in? It's a tough,
And we
it's a
don't have
tough
to dive too far.
question.
I think that's helpful. Like our zoning, which says 1 unit per 10 acres, is what is going to
Well, that's,
continue to, even though the environmental factor might allow for it and the availability might allow for it, it's still our zoning. That would
yeah,
be-
our zoning will still be intact, and in theory, that's going to be a
Yeah, and I would
standard.
just add to that and say, the discussion around housing outside of the urban growth boundaries is always going to be a focal point, was a big discussion within the CGAC, was a big discussion throughout this process. We came and, spoke to the board about that. And I think that the distinctions around preserving rural character and providing some level of kind of opening, it's a very narrow opening with criteria, but the policy direction would need to be, to have that play out, there would need to be changes to zoning, likely.
Right.
And with this plan, that would be a approximate or a next step that could happen. Right now, that we know from the priority direction, again, that was kind of received through community, is looking at how do we make sure that the water regulations go first. Probably, right? That's making sure that there's sufficient water, that there's adequate water. We understand what our role from a county can be in terms of water adequacy, both from a metro district standpoint as well as from a groundwater standpoint, and make those updates from a code standpoint to prioritize what we understand to be our significant limited resource. I think that the housing outside the UGB, on one hand, the policy language that's in the plan is scoped in such a way that's responsive to the CGAC, has more criteria in it than the CGAC listed. So try to be more specific. What do we mean by proximity to infrastructure? So there's some criteria outlisted and definitions in terms of what that means. That's going to be not as much as what some housing advocates might want to see, and more than what traditional preservation advocates may want to see. But certainly within that policy also there's a statement that says high density development not appropriate in rural areas where there's insufficient level of infrastructure or absence of services to support such development. So if that kind of helps color that in a little bit. But I would say, again, from a process standpoint, would need to be zoning change, which would go through a public process as well.
And how is zoning updates envisioned as a component of this? Like
When it comes to
following in 10 years? I guess I'm just wondering, like, how did you all wrestle with?
And Suzanne is going to jump in, so I'll let her jump in and follow.
I think what we get the policy direction first, then it's a matter of creating language in the land use code that even provides the pathway. Today, our affordable housing zone districts, you can only ask to rezone to those if you're in the urban growth boundary. So, I mean, again, there's multiple pieces there. So like with this, we're not envisioning, oh, we've picked out areas we'd like to rezone to accommodate this. It's more, if the code is written to provide an opportunity, then they go through a process to determine if it's appropriate and if the zoning at that point is appropriate in whatever that location might be. So again, like this plan isn't envisioning kind of jumping to that piece about mapping where might this happen, where could it be, how do they meet these criteria. It's providing the opportunity for someone to come in and say, I think I have a location that could meet these criteria.
Sure. I guess I'm just, is it appropriate, for future boards to consider we should look at zoning comprehensively and kind of evaluate what the status of zoning is in the county and whether it matches. Because on the reverse side of that, I just think some of our AR10 is ridiculous. It should not be AR10. We know that, but is there sort of a plan to really look at that in a big picture of saying, okay, to match these policies, we would need to rezone these areas.
So yes, there isn't the opportunity for that. And yes, I mean, within some of the caucus master plans, there are recommendations on rezonings, again. So yeah. I think, yes, there is a point when we'd want to look at that. And I think as part of that, yes, is there anything here that changes sort of the basis of the rural area zonings that we have today, going either direction, up or down, but that's, again, what is the policy supporting to look at that?
Yeah, sure.
And maybe what I would add in on that just really briefly is, I think that opportunity still exists to date from the CJC and the direction that we've been given. There has not been, quite frankly, the appetite to fully look at rezoning or anything that big at the county level. That is, as Suzanne said, it was really calling out, we just don't even really create a lens of opportunity for housing. And so the first step was these policies and creating a pathway. I think that as this comp plan moves forward and this team is coming back to all of you about what code changes in pieces, if there is direction from the board that wants to take it on, going back to those bold statements, that absolutely is at the direction of the board. But it has not been the direction through the growth committee or otherwise to take that on right way.
And I would just say, because, there continues to be sort of, again, we're potentially giving away development opportunity in our current zoning that maybe is in conflict with some of the values we're trying to achieve in this update by not doing rezonings, and yet folks who might want to achieve some of the things we want to achieve in these policies would have to come and proactively ask for it, I mean, my lens is still, I'm not convinced that a 4,500 square foot triplex on a well, that would be exempt is more intensive than the one unit that is automatically allowed by right on that same parcel. So that's sort of where my point of view is coming from. But I do think that, I encourage future boards to kind of look at, okay, how does our zoning then align with these goals that we've now set forward for the community?
And I would add just briefly that you're right. There are several, as Suzanne alluded to, several of the caucus plans have made recommendations to address the AR10 zoning, which may not necessarily still be appropriate in some of the rural portions of the county. Some of those zoning changes, for example, up the frying pan, were made as a result of the caucus master plan recommendations. So, yeah, steps have been taken, and there are some recommendations currently in plans that could be acted upon.
Yeah, thanks.
So just
appreciate that.
Background.
Final comments or final question?
Yeah, I have a question related to Kelly's conversation. So the Capital Snow Master Plan, for instance, specifically says no duplexes, no apartment buildings. And so where would, if the county wanted to go towards increasing density in certain areas for housing, what happens with that kind of master plan if it's in conflict with the goals of the county?
Well, as I alluded to here, one, as I alluded to in the last bullet on the screen here, where there's a conflict between a caucus area master plan and the Picken County Comprehensive Plan in
Oh,
terms
yeah,
of policy
I know who
direction.
wins.
Right,
But-
and where there is, and there are certainly some, the countywide comprehensive plan will take priority. So, at base level, that policy at least is established in the plan. Hopefully we can come up with some, in code implementation, perhaps we can come up with some standards that will help direct those issues
Yeah.
more thoroughly moving forward. But
Okay.
at this point, we're just at a policy level.
Yeah, and I would just say, the criteria that's listed describes proximity to transit, proximity to infrastructure, proximity to water, may not be appropriate in locations, right, in parts of the Snowcap Caucasus where that's not sufficient. So already that policy language narrows what's a
Location.
location that may be appropriate, and certainly up drainages where there's not transit, there's not sufficient water, already makes those, kind of takes those off the table. So there's a bit of kind of looking at what are the goals around appropriate locations, aligned with, again, that criteria, and many of that are responding to what is naturally constraining or already limitations just based on site.
Yeah. Hannah's spot on. Yeah, some of the criteria automatically precludes the type of development that you're suggesting up some of the rural valleys in the county. So thanks for that.
I'm not promoting. I'm just asking you a question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Final wrap-up thoughts and comments?
And those were, thank you, good comments.
There's more.
Shall we continue?
We're at time. Is Mr. Yamashita, Supervisor Yamashita, en route?
There's nobody here.
I don't.
Not here yet.
Is Matt online, Michaela? Can you see if Matt
Is
is
he calling
on?
in?
No, he's not here yet. So
No doubt stuck in traffic, right? Does yeah.
Shall we continue?
Please.
Chapter 5 is community and economic health. The policy sections that are within this chapter on the right, just from a kind of an outline again of what's included in this: healthy community, economy, lifelong services, local food, public safety, hazard mitigation. I'll just say this has been, this chapter specifically has been one where our team has been working extensively with other department staff, from human services, from public health, from senior services to emergency management, to again bring alignment between other work that's happening throughout county departments to ensure that that is captured and supported within this comprehensive plan. Kind of 4 main themes throughout this section: engaging the workforce, recognizing that a significant amount of Picken County workforce supports our local economy but may not live within Picken County, so that's certainly acknowledged within this chapter. Prioritizing not just physical health, but also certainly mental and behavioral health. The work of public health and their behavioral health improvement plan and strategic plan has been happening kind of parallel to this. We've been working with their team. Supporting critical community services, again recognizing that there are many jobs that are essential for our community to function, but also those who perform them are critical to our community fabric. So a recognition of what it takes for Pitkin County to continue to work and serve our community at large, and then the tie to the next generation. So both supporting from childcare up to senior services, and also ways that folks who grow up in Pitkin County are able to find inroads back or stay within the county. So aspects within this chapter, really all aspects of personal health: physical, social, behavioral, services throughout phases of life, Pickens County's workforce and economic job diversification. Those are aspects that were part of policies that were in our current plan, kind of pulled forward, and with a finer tipped marker kind of included within this chapter. Local food security, that was an interesting thing that came out of a lot of the direction of feedback that we received from the community to ensure that that was captured within our policy statements and support. Emergency management and other core community operations, acknowledging, supporting them, and coordination with the hazard mitigation plan, and as that gets updated. So those are the key aspects that are within this community and economic health chapter. And I would say, including this chapter really rounds out the comprehensive plan to ensure that we are addressing not just the land use and the development patterns, but really all aspects of that quality of life and kind of our community fabric. Happy to answer any questions specific to this chapter. I would say, another piece too, just to note, this is in coordination with other county departments, as well as relying substantially on community partners and other organizations that are doing this work to support the community alongside the work of the county departments.
So,
We can keep going if there's
So
nothing
Matt's
else.
about to walk in the door. We would love for you to do one more section.
One more, our last section, here we are.
okay, yeah. So the regional approach, chapter 6, is also a new chapter in the comprehensive plan. And the broad community direction, no surprise, is to engage in regional coordination around priorities of housing and transportation, to leverage funding and be efficient in our approaches to both, to preserve and protect regional environmental systems which don't recognize jurisdictional boundaries, and also to recognize quality of life as a regional concern, again, speaking to transportation and workforce and the like. And then to recognize that up-valley decisions have down-valley consequences for our workforce, again, pointing to traffic, commuting, et cetera.
Vice versa.
And vice versa. That is true. Thank you, Patty. So then new policy direction includes regional transportation considerations for the airport, public transportation, new technologies and coordinated road management. And then there are sections in the built environment chapter that also speak directly to transportation connectivity. Climate action efforts across the region, again, because climate is something that affects the entire area, right? Strategic partnerships across municipalities and adjacent counties, again, to ensure that we are taking advantage of economies of scale and efficient approaches to issues that affect everybody. And then finally, watershed protections. We're looking at a watershed on the whole rather than in distinct areas, and we need to be working collaboratively in our approaches there. And especially as we move into drought, the drought situation that we're in today. So that's it, unless you have questions on regional approach. We did have a couple of more slides on, but we can just
I can just
A
wrap up.
question
wrap
back
here.
too.
Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead,
Greg.
go back a couple. Just wanted to ask one right there, the regional approach. Just that it's funny. Usually, anytime I hear priorities around housing, I usually see protection of land, open land, almost in the same sentence. And this is one of the times when I don't. And I just wanted to. It comes up with watershed protections, and it's here. Clearly, that's still a priority for the community, but it's not articulated here, and that does make me a little nervous.
I didn't articulate it, but I'd say in the third bullet, recognizing quality of life as a regional concern, would incorporate the need to acknowledge and.
I'd be
and
more
preserve.
specific. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah, I just
good
think
point.
it needs to be, it has been,
Explicit.
it's constantly articulated as the balancing thing. But that's what stuck out. Other than that, I love it.
Thank you, thank you for that, yeah.
Jeffrey?
Wrap up comments.
Yeah, real quick, Greg's right on that one, and on the kind of opposite, kind of different side of that. We have to be really careful these days with the use of climate action plans and climate mitigation, those issues, because our documents are being perused by the federal government, and it might be affecting our grant application opportunities. So I'm not sure how we can still incorporate and address it, but be careful about the wording. We can talk further about that.
Thank you.
Yeah. In summary, you all have the plan. Would be great to have you all be familiar with that.
And easy to read, thank you.
And then we'll
That's great.
be moving forward with PNC March 3rd, and then coming to you all for approval after the PNC adoption.
Beautiful work.
Thank
Photo,
you.
photo credits. As a
Yeah, what are the
photographer,
photo credits?
I want photo credits.
Oh, they're in there, Greg.
Are they?
They're in
Okay, I just
there.
missed them. Okay, well, don't
Maybe
scratch
did we
that.
miss one? Yeah.
Do-
Thank you.
excellent. Does the board need 5 minutes, or are we ready to proceed with Matt's presentation?
I could use 5.
So we're going to take a quick 5, give Matt time to set up, offer
He's
him,
right behind. Sorry.
offer him a sparkling water, anything else you need, Matt.
I'll take
And,
something.
yeah. This is the Board of County Commissioners work session on Tuesday, February 10th. We are running a few minutes behind schedule. That is all because of the chair letting the growth advisory presentation go long. We're really delighted to have Matt Yamashita, Supervisor in Wildlife, joining us for an overall update as well as conversation with the Board of County Commissioners. So thank you so much for joining us, Matt.
Well, I really appreciate the opportunity. I always appreciate any invite to come and present to you, answer questions, just generic updates, whatever it is. I think it's always a productive conversation. I think we've established a pretty good working relationship with the county, and hopefully these kinds of conversations perpetuate that. So I had met with Kara and Ryan just to kind of go over some things. A lot of this kind of stemmed from actually Commissioner Jacober. Wanted to reach out and just get some updates. There's been a lot working in the world of Colorado Parks and Wildlife. I think a lot of residents in the valley, a lot of communities are aware of some of the things, but there's probably some of it that's fact and some of it that's not as factual. And so that was where some of this kind of was generated, was just in clarifying, what was happening. And it, unfortunately, this day and age, it seems like there's so much going on that we can't get in front of each other enough to keep up to date on what those topics are. So I'm open to whatever the commission would like to discuss, has questions on. But specifically, there were 3 topics that we were hoping to kind of at least cover. They're topics that it's not the first time that we've talked about and discussed with this commission, but ones that there's been progress or there's been some new activities, some new information made available. I didn't create a formal presentation with slides or anything, because some of this I kind of wanted it to be organic in nature, and just wherever, if there were questions, other things, I didn't want to necessarily direct or guide what that was. I know that you have some opinions and questions of your own, so I wanted to leave that open-ended. One of the topics that I wanted to at least address with the commission was, I know this is a topic that's come up multiple times, and actually is probably going on several years now, but related to bear activity and some of the conflict that we've seen at the landfill over the years. This one's come up, just in casual discussion. This one's come up as formal items for our Parks and Wildlife Commission. There's been members of the public that have brought this to our commission's attention and have raised concerns over bear activity at the Pitkin County landfill. I know we've hosted discussions with Pitkin County staff, with the commission in the past, on what that looks like, if there's things that we can do to kind of help resolve some of those issues. We've even asked the question of how significant and are some of those issues. Are those the most pressing things that we need to be talking about? One of the things that's come up recently is a lot of where a lot of these concerns were rooted were stimulated by a group called Colorado Bear Coalition. So their director, she's based out of Boulder, Colorado, and there were members of Colorado Bear Coalition that had voiced some concerns just about the number of bears that were utilizing the facility, what some of those conflicts look like, and pretty pointed in some of their commentary directed at Pitkin County and at the commission. Of recent, I've had conversations with Colorado Bear Coalition, and some of those members, and I will agree with her statements that she thought they were less than productive. They didn't represent kind of the desires of that coalition appropriately. They pointed a lot of fingers at the county for not taking appropriate action to mitigate some of those conflicts, and that was a point of contention. Even with Colorado Parks and Wildlife, we are charged with managing the bear populations in the Roaring Fork Valley, the black bear resource of the state of Colorado. And as a part of that, we are also responsible for helping local communities mitigate any human black bear conflict. This isn't a new topic for any of you. I think you're all very well aware of what that is. But a couple of the things that came up was we took a step back. And my conversations with Brenda Lee, who is their director, we discussed that, hey, maybe it's not an irrelevant topic. It is a relevant topic. There are, I think, no secrets. There are black bears that utilize the public waste facility. However, there's bears that utilize other portions of Pickens County as well. And so we were trying to just say, hey, this is one place that we can probably focus some additional efforts. Where Colorado Bear Coalition comes in is they had done some extensive research on, are there ways, are there tools, are there options that might be available to the county to look into, just on how we might mitigate that? Short answer is yes. There are some different things out there that could be explored. And I know in the past, the county, being responsible stewards, they're trying to figure out, well, are some of those tools, is that an appropriate place to spend taxpayers' dollars and try to put in something? It's been a hard question to answer. One of the proposals was regarding electric fencing, and there's pros and cons related to it. And the question that was asked of CPW in the past is, so how efficient and effective would electric fencing be at keeping black bears out of that facility? I don't have a great answer for you on that one. We as an agency, we support the use of electric fencing in other regards. Beekeepers use it extensively to keep bears out of any bee yards. It's great, but it also has its flaws. It's not a silver bullet. It's not bulletproof by any stretch of the imagination. Bears will find their way around it. They can fail. So there were other questions that were raised. So what would be the cost of maintenance? What would be the cost of installation? We don't know any of those. And even talking with Colorado Bear Coalition, they don't have the answer to that. But one thing I wanted to present to the commission is in my conversations with Colorado Bear Coalition, they did offer up, if that would be of interest to the commission, that's something that they'd be willing to kind of take a look at and go outside of the state of Colorado take a look at other facilities within the state of Colorado, see if other discussions have been hosted. Pickens County isn't the only county, obviously, that has a public waste facility that black bears frequent. So taking a look at it more holistically and figuring out, what this looks like outside of just Pickens County. And they'd be willing to come, in front of the commission at some point in the future and present some of their findings, see if it's something that the commission is interested in entertaining or if there's ideas. Also recognizing that moving forward, there's plans to kind of redo the facility up there, and if there are ways of embedding some alternatives into some of that, specifically for benefit of the wildlife resource, great. It's at least an option item, but not mandating anything. So, perspective from Colorado Parks and Wildlife is that we're here as a resource available to the community, to the coalition, to residents, anybody else, questions related to that. We're here to answer those questions. But we recognize that our role is not, we're not responsible for making decisions for the county. That's your role. So we're here to help inform you, but we're not here to tell you what you should do or how you should better do your jobs. So I'll kind of put a pin in that just to see if you have any follow-up thoughts, questions, otherwise.
Sure.
Craig.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. So on one hand, I heard you say that CPW is responsible for the resource. On the other hand, you just said you don't want to interfere with whatever the county does. So I have a disconnect there. I want you to dive into that a little deeper, if you would. And then also, I think it'd be great to have someone looking at best practices for us, because I think we should be practicing the best practices regarding, empathy for the wildlife resource as well as for the people who use the place. And I don't know, is the Bear Coalition even somebody we would consider as a consultant? If we're going to reach out and look for the best practices, who would be the best person? Who would be the best group to ask? So those are the other questions, and maybe that's where you could help us as well. They've shown some light on it, but I don't get the sense. I don't have a lot of confidence or lack of confidence in them. I just don't know them well enough to know where are they the trusted group that we would look to advise us if we went that route. So it's a twofold question. One is, well, who manages the resource if you're deferring to us in some level? So I guess I need to understand that better. Thanks.
No, I appreciate the question and the clarification. It is. It's an interesting one because it's kind of the chicken or the egg in a lot of regards. But when I make the statement that CPW is responsible for managing the wildlife resource, that's strictly based on just like we would have any other plan. Our herd management plans, our population management plans. We have a black bear management plan. You guys are very intimately familiar with like our elk management plans and deer management plans. Those plans are all based on the desires and the will of the residents, the visitors in those communities. So, I mean, our goal is to take into consideration what does Pitkin County, what does the resource have available, but also what do the people, what do the elected officials, what do those communities, what do they want to see out of the wildlife resource within those communities? What are the population numbers? What are the tolerable conflict numbers? Those kinds of things, and we manage based on the feedback we receive from that. So that's where you can kind of see where both of us play a role in some of that active management.
I guess my interpretation would be that it's less about advocating for the animal than for the community and how it relates to the animal. By the way, we also have an elk herd that sleeps in the compost pile, which to me seems like maybe that's no less natural than living on somebody's ranch and eating their hay. But it doesn't seem like the optimal natural situation for a herd of elk. And so, my concern is give them a place to be wild, but that means don't give them a heated compost pile to sleep in. So that's where I am. It's how do we allow them to be wild animals and take away that attractive nuisance?
And it's a good question because I think you stated it very well, an attractive nuisance. And it goes into a lot of what we see for development, specifically in this valley here. A lot of where the animals would like to be, seasonally specifically, those are the developed portions of the valley. Fact of the matter, and that's historically where they were. That's where they want to. They have some fidelity to those sites and those locations for different reasons. Some of it's born out of just historical context. Some of it's born out of a necessity. But they're adapting to what we have left or have available for them. And so it's managing within that kind of thread in the needle and figuring out. So what is best for the wildlife resource, but what's also okay by our standards as humans. Some of it is probably not appropriate. Some of it has actual detrimental impacts to population management, whether it's disease prevalence or attractants of predators, those other kinds of species that follow. There's things that come with it. We can work with the commission and the county on some of what that might be, as far as, is it healthy for elk to be living on a compost pile within the facility? Yes and no.
They like it.
They do, and they do well there. But there's some other nuance to that, obviously. So those are good things for us to consider, because even though we may be addressing bears in particular, there are other species that would be affected. There are, there's operations within the facility that are definitely affected. So all of those are things that we probably collaboratively need to at least question, consider before moving forward on anything. And it's not one of those one size fits all.
Thank you.
Francie.
Yeah, if I could just say a couple of things that we talked about this is that with our reconstruction at the landfill, for instance, it doesn't make much sense to put up a whole bunch of fence right now until we're done. And I do have numbers on the fencing, and I have been talking with the Bear Coalition lady, can't remember her name. And I think it's something that we should look at as part of our plan as we rebuild the landfill, but I think we're premature in thinking about doing it now, just because everything's going to change over there, and it is expensive. It does require maintenance, but the other thing that Matt talked to me about that I really appreciated was that the bears at the landfill, when they've examined their scat, they have food that's not from the landfill as well. So they're not, I think that's correct, right? So they're not eating exclusively at the landfill, and they do move. So I thought that was interesting, because I pictured them just living there all the time, chewing on bones, that kind of thing. But yeah, anyway.
Is this an appropriate time to switch subjects and discuss connecting landscapes, for lack of a better term?
Can I?
Yeah, final round on Scat.
I think, I'm surprised that they didn't already have the information on how much they cost and how much they cost to maintain before they came to us and said, put up a fence. So if they want to go out and gather that information, bring it back to us with a joint meeting of some sort in the future, I think that would be appropriate. But I'm not going to like hire, because I think a lot of times if we ask people to be our consultants, they expect us to pay for whatever they're going to do. And I'm not in a position to do that yet at this point. But I think if they want to gather information and maybe bring it back for a joint meeting with CPW, that might be appropriate in the future. As far as the elk sleeping, if you want to give them fuzzy blankets, maybe they won't sleep in the compost.
I would hope that our staff could engage with that, and because if they don't come to us and we don't do it, then we haven't accomplished it.
Well, they have come to us through me, so.
Okay, all right. So
Thank you,
we'll be
Francie.
following up. Thank you.
And I think one more point on that topic as we transition to the next one, kind of bleeds into the next one, is, again, the landfill isn't the only place where we're managing human-bear conflict within the county. And truth be told, it's probably not even the highest priority conflict site. In the eyes of Colorado Parks and Wildlife, one of the things that we obviously are concerned about is human health and safety. And, there may be bears at the landfill, but if we were to receive two different calls of a bear hanging out on a compost pile or a bear inside of a house, the bear inside of a house, we're going to that call. And so, we unfortunately do receive a lot of those calls within Pitkin County, within the Roaring Fork Valley. Those are our priority. Those are the ones that if I were to say we need to address something before something else, it's probably figuring out some of those ones that put humans and subsequently the bears in harm's way. Those are the topics that I think are probably more pressing for us to kind of take a deeper dive.
Some data on that at some point would be great, how that's going. Thank you.
Connecting Landscapes, for lack of a better term, but I think it is a nonprofit in Colorado.
Yes. So another topic that we are wanted to mention, and this ties to one of the local initiatives and what we're kind of looking at. The broader topic being, just connecting fragmented habitats, ensuring that there's some version of passage from summer habitats, production areas, to winter habitats, all of the above. That's kind of what maintains healthy populations of any species. That's something that in our valley here, we have been struggling. We've been struggling to maintain some of those, and as things like development and even recreational pressure, some of these other things, they all have some version of an impact or can have an impact on what that is. And so that's a relevant topic. One of the things specifically when I was talking with staff, I wanted to point out, one of the local initiatives and one of the topics that we are engaged in as an agency is the safe passages, and talking about highway crossings in particular. And I know the county, you guys have been very, very intimately involved in a lot of that. And we are as well. We're definitely paying attention to a lot of that. We're paying attention to it here. Out of our office, we also work with Eagle County, and that's a hot topic on their agenda. So this isn't the first time this topic has come up. We've been talking about this for decades now, and we're finally getting to the place where we're starting to talk brass tacks and trying to create projects that can help resolve some of these concerns and these issues. One of the things that CPW has, and I think the way I'll state it is where we've kind of it's been questioned, almost criticized on our lack of support or activity on what some of these highway crossing structures are, and it's not because of a lack of interest. It's not because it's not a desirable project. I think inherently, anytime there's passage across a roadway that can, save motorists from vehicle collisions, save animals from becoming, a carcass on the side of the road, that's a good thing. I think where we're trying to focus right now, and this was brought up, in casual conversation at the beginning of this, is that we're looking at it from a landscape scale perspective. We're looking at it from a population level perspective. And yes, I think anybody that travels Highway 82 corridor, we do see deer and elk that get struck by vehicles every year, bears in the summer, deer and elk in the winter. That's just something that I think people get used to seeing. right now, the bigger fight that we're facing is that, to maintain some of these healthy populations of deer and elk in our valley, we're there. Yes, there is a barrier coming across Highway 82. The habitat loss is a higher priority for us right now. So when it comes to some of those things that we're really focusing on, it's not trying to get them across a highway. One of the things that we're trying to put our weight behind is habitat protection, conservation. That brings up a topic that I know is near and dear to this commission and this county is, I think about projects like the Three Meadows Ranch project here, which, here in the last year, we've worked with you guys and you guys worked with Eagle County in order to secure thousands of acres of conserved habitat. Phenomenal. Those kinds of things those put tools in front of us that we can help successfully manage an elk herd. So habitat preservation, conservation, definitely one of our highest priorities. The other one, the second place one, maybe first place, depending upon which day you talk about it, is habitat improvement. Fact of the matter is that most of our critical habitats on the valley floors here, they're developed. They're already impacted to some degree. We'll probably never be able to reverse any of that. And so right now what we see are our ungulate herds, our deer, elk, even bighorn sheep, some of these other species, they're using suboptimal habitat in order to survive. So going back to, the comment about elk using compost piles at the landfill or taking their midday nap on a golf course in Aspen Glen, some of these types of places that don't seem like natural settings, they're not. But they're using it by default. They're using it because they have to find a way to assimilate. Otherwise, they're facing some sort of, extinction type event. So they're trying to make the best of what they're left with. And that's where, as an agency, we're trying to find some of these less optimal habitats that exist. These are ones that are either higher elevation, dense brush, those kinds of things. And we're putting our weight behind manipulation of that habitat to turn it into better quality habitat that those animals can use in lieu of some of the historical winter range habitats. So those are probably our two priorities. Things like, like safe passages where we're doing highway crossings, that's not a bad thing at all. I won't ever stand in front of anybody and say that we're, that CPW is against that. It's just not one of the top priorities that we're trying to focus on. And so it's not for any reason other than we are focused on, conserving our wildlife populations here. We're focusing on some of those other projects. They have a higher priority for us right now.
Kelly, and then Patricia. Patricia.
Yeah. Patricia, but I raised my hand. But it's okay.
She's like,
a little bit more like what is an example project of that you're talking about? Like, what's the scale? Are you talking about 20 acres? Does that have to be 200 acres? Is that 3,000 acres? Like, what's the criteria to get involved?
Scale's important. Thousands of acres are obviously better than tens of acres. However, there are places where, there are tens of acres or 100 acres that are super important. And it's interesting because, I think about the concept of like safe passage. And my mind doesn't inherently go just towards crossing a roadway. Safe passage in my head also can mean permeability through subdivisions or past developed areas. Toward some other, other habitats. So it might be getting animals, from someplace down here in the valley floor. I think about some of these places like Chaparral, where you get them from there and how they transition from winter range habitat there to wherever their high elevation habitat might be up Hunter Creek. And so, they're going to have to cross not just roadways, but they're trying to find passage through some of these subdivisions, some of these other developed complexes, some of these other recreational areas where maybe it's a seasonal closure that creates the safe passage for some of that. So I don't think you can put a pin in saying it has to be a minimum of 100 acres to be successful. It might be a 50-acre parcel or swath through an area. It's all based on the amount of human activity, the kind of the necessity for what the animals are going to use that passage for. But I think it's nebulous in nature. But that's where I look to some of our local staff, Curtis, John. That's what they do is they go out there and when they're flying in the helicopter, when they're going out and doing summer surveys and looking at production areas, they are qualifying exactly where those animals are using, what times of year, and what is that connectivity between those those areas in order to come up with the answer for it. So is it 50 acres here? Is that more important than the 1,000 acres over here? The answer might be yes.
And is there, in addition to sort of facilitating movement through, are there habitat treatments that are considered as well? Like, what does that look like?
Definitely. Some of the treatments, notably, and I'll give credit to our partners in specifically like BLM Forest Service. I'm looking at them. Forest Service has done a lot here in the past decade, where they have a lot of these prescribed burns. Some of them match really well with what we're doing on a wildfire mitigation front, but not always. But some of these prescribed burns here, they're phenomenal. The only thing that we're facing now is that some of these burns are, we're 5 years post-burn or 10 years post-burn, and it's not a one and done type treatment. These are things that we have to plan into every few years. We need to go back and be retreating these resources because, again, they're suboptimal habitats, and without constant manipulation, we lose some of what their benefit is to the wildlife resource. So, but I think about those because I think locally, we've done some up Hunter Creek here, Collins Creek. We had some of those. We've also come in and done some habitat manipulation, some mastication type events over in the basalt area. Did some additional work over on the Crown. We did a lot of that over in Pickens County parcels over there. Avalanche Creek is another great example of some prescribed burns where we've seen a lot of elk use as a result of that. So those are some of the projects when I talk about habitat improvement.
Okay.
So I've got Patty and then Francie.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for being here. Great information. I was going to bring up the wildfire aspect in the prescribed burns because it then creates the better vegetation, better habitat all the way across. What can we do, say, through our Open Space and Trails program, which has conserved a lot of great habitat, which probably also needs to be cleaned up, made better habitat? How can we work with you, because that's an appropriate use of our funds, to try and create those habitats where they can stay maybe on one side of the road or the other, where they're comfortable, they have forage, they have shelter, they have what they need. And I think we could improve our partnership that's already great with CPW, but I think we should maybe think in that direction, how we can work cooperatively to.
I think we have really good groundwork. We have a really good framework for already established on what we're doing, how we're working with the county on some of those projects. One of the things that I hope you're intimately familiar with is the Roaring Fork Outdoor Coalition. Pickens County plays a significant role on that group, and one of the goals of that group is to help provide the context of exactly what that is. So how does CPW, how do the Forest Service, how do all these other partner groups, organizations, where do we align, and how do we focus efforts on both conservation and recreation? That's the kind of the goal of that entire coalition, is to take those two facets and to find some meaningful way of balancing some of those within our communities here. And we're hoping to lean heavily on some of the tools that coalition is developing so that it can help point us in the right direction. So we know we can come to the county and say, hey, based on what we're looking at here, CPW has already provided our input, our knowledge, Forest Service has provided theirs, and based off of all of these things, this is where it's directing us. This is where we need to kind of focus on habitat improvement projects. These are areas where, recreation is very appropriate here.
Thank you, because I know that quickly traveling like Owl Creek in the evenings, it's awesome to see that herd of elk out there, and there's a lot of them, and they've got great forage there because of the haying, so they're out there right now, having a great time. But that's what makes the habitat and the animals so amazing in our valley, and I want to thank you for all the work that you do.
Francie and then Greg.
That's a
please.
perfect segue into what I was going to ask. Can you just give the board an update on the health of our herds?
Oh, yeah.
Which herds in particular?
Well, the Avalanche, and compare it possibly to the one over by Three Rivers. I can't remember. The whole top of the Missouri Heights area. What's that one called?
So that's the frying pan elk herd. This is the avalanche
sort of
herd.
compare those two and talk about recruitment a little bit, and and just mention deer, because I think it would be great if we had an update on just where our herds are
Certainly.
right now.
Upper Valley also.
Yeah, no, I'll start with elk real quick. And so our valley, on one side, on the Carbondale side, the Snowmass side, that's what we reference as our avalanche elk herd. On the other side of the valley, on going basalt, the Frying Pan Valley, and it actually extends over towards Gypsum and Eagle. That's what we reference as our Frying Pan River herd. Both herds, and it's a good point. I'll take an opportunity to point out that a lot of people, what they pay attention to is they look at our population numbers and they base the herd health off of where our population is. And CPW manages for population objective ranges. So we have a range, a population range where, we want to manage for a certain number of elk between, just for an example, it might be between 8,000 and 10,000 animals. So we try to shoot for something in there and manage for a stable population within those range there. So they'll take a look at it and they'll say, hey, you guys are at 8,500 animals. You guys are within your range. Great. That must be a healthy herd. There's way more to it, and I think where we're starting to, it's great that people are paying attention to that. The piece that's almost more important than just the population number itself is, and this is where we look at the herd resiliency. We look at their health, and where that comes up specifically is in our calf-cow ratios. And I think I've come in front of this commission before and discussed, some of what that is. Calf-cow ratio is the number of calves per 100 cows within that population, and that's kind of how we measure what our recruitment will be into our next year's age class. And that's grossly important for the longevity, the perpetuity of that herd. And what we're looking at right now is both herds in this valley. While our overall herd numbers are looking decent and are either within our population objective range or in the Frying Pan herd, they're actually above that range. Our calf-cow ratios are still below where we would be to sustain those herds. So what that's telling us as biologists is that, great, we've got a lot of animals right here and right now, but for the future generations that are going to be living in this valley and enjoying that resource, we may reach a point of diminishing returns where we can't recover those populations. And I think back to this, I presented on this last year, but I think back to the winter up in Meeker and Craig here, 22-23, where we had, Mother Nature threw a curveball and said, hey, here's one of the hardest winters you're going to see in the next 20, 30 years, and decimated a large percentage of that herd. Well, their herd health was phenomenal. Their calf-cow ratios were ranging in the 50s, 60s per 100 cows, so they were able to recover. In a matter of 2-3 years, they're already coming back into a healthy population, even though they were losing, 30-40% of their overall population or more in some places. If we were to receive the same kind of historic winter here, with those kinds of numbers, we would not be able to recover. And if we did, it wouldn't be near as fast, and it would allow for some of these other factors, some of the other constraints, they may play a more significant role on whether we can even recover from that kind of an event. So right now we're paying really close attention to the fact that we have calves that are being born, but they're not making it. They're not seeing the first birthday, so they're disappearing within that first typically 6 months, 9 months of life. And when we do our winter classification flights, they're no longer within the herd. So
what kind of number?
Why
What
is
number is
that?
that?
Malnutrition?
Not really. Some of it, yes, but we actually have some fairly healthy animals. A lot of it is that there's no great one answer. Some of it's based on development. Some of it's based on even recreational pressures where they don't have these summer solitude areas, the time of year where they should be just sedentary, getting fat, prepping for the winter. We love the backcountry, just like they do. And whenever we have people, hiking through some of these areas and bumps them over the next hill, well, bumping them over the next hill is one thing, but when they get bumped over the next 3 hills over the course of the day, every time they do that, they're expending energy that otherwise would have served to get them through the next winter. So that's an aspect we're paying attention to. Our predator numbers are extremely high, both bears, mountain lions. We have very, very high predator numbers. We're seeing a lot of mortality, even to adults, through our predator populations. So that's another factor. Some of the disease issues, as we start getting some of these suboptimal habitats and concentrations in areas that they shouldn't be, we start seeing disease issues. There's a lot of reasons, but.
Greg?
Yeah, thanks for this. This is all really helpful. Anecdotally, that's all I've got for you is from my house, I look at Sky Mountain Park, and too often I see people riding mountain bikes at night during the closure. So we have places we say, oh, we've got a seasonal closure, we've closed it down, and nobody gets to go there at night. Turns out people are going to violate those rules, and I think what they're doing is just taking that habitat offline because it's no longer a sanctuary. Can you share what your concerns are throughout the watershed? I'm sure there's some places where this is an issue, others where maybe it's not. But are we doing enough about it, and are we taking it seriously enough?
That's a lot of deep thoughts there.
That's a yes or no is your answer.
What I'll say is you're correct. And the unfortunate fact is that even if we get 95% compliance, on seasonal closures and a lot of the other rules that are meant to protect the resource, that's not enough. All it takes is a small percentage of people not paying attention to that and violating it to really, disturb that resource enough that it's kind of one of those losses. This goes into, Commissioner Clapper's comment earlier about some of the recreational development, and we have a pressing need for more. We as a species, as humans, we want to enjoy the outdoors. That's just why people move here. The unfortunate part is that every time we do that, it does open a gate, and as an agency, it opens an avenue where we will see some degree of disturbance. We will see some degree of non-compliance. And so we try to manage within those constraints. And as we start developing more trail systems and more recreational opportunities, unfortunately, it probably does have some lasting impacts. That's where I do look to the county, because I recognize that we've worked really closely with your open space and natural resource folks, and they're definitely helping us a lot right now. We're focusing a lot more on the open space side of that. Instead of Pickens County open space and trails, they are really focusing on the open space aspect and trying to figure out creative ways of just conserving some of these habitats, not necessarily with the mandate of putting a trail system on there, but just making sure that we appropriately manage the trails that we have, improve and increase efficiency there, but also set aside, a little space for some of the open space part of it that preserves and conserves the natural resources, the wildlife resource that makes those trails what we want the experience to be. So, I'll give credit to the county staff, because they are definitely helping us in so many ways, just trying to make sure that we don't forget that.
I wanted to follow up. I know I always report if I see somebody, or and I know they've got cameras, and Gary always responds that they'll check the cameras. My concern is it's kind of a losing proposition. If it's not 5%, if 95% compliance, it's probably 98% you need, or 99% compliance you need, and even a 1% violation perhaps could compromise the resource for the animals. And so I have to think about that whenever there's talk of building a new trail, or the enthusiasm for opening up a new trail somewhere. You just realize you're taking habitat offline. I just don't know if there's a way to balance it. And perhaps we're kidding ourselves to think we can have both.
And I will emphasize again, hopefully, that at least we have the Roaring Fork Outdoor Coalition, where that is 100% what that coalition is designed to pay attention to. We actually have a meeting tomorrow in order to start working and creating some actionable items on that front. But I don't ever want to give up hope. I always think that there's hope left in any scenario there. And I'm proud that at least we're paying attention to some of those things, and we're going into it. And even if there are some losses to recognize, there's still hope. We still have a meaningful way of managing for a wildlife resource and recreation and all the experiences that this county has to offer. So I think groups like the Outdoor Coalition, your staff, I think we're all moving forward in a positive direction where there is a good future ahead, and kind of co-managing a lot of what those demands are.
Thanks for your optimism.
Patty.
Mine's just really quick to tag on. Is there a difference, or you may or may not know the answer to this, between the use of the bicycle on the trail, electric versus pedal? Is it speed? Is it a different noise? Is it a vibration that may have more of an impact? Or I just was thinking that maybe there's another factor there.
Going back to your comment earlier, yes. No, there are, and we don't have any specific studies here locally that will answer that, but there are studies on the books that we reference frequently. One, a lot of them have been done up in some experimental forests, Idaho, other places within the western U.S. where they have studied that, and there is a component of the amount of noise or disturbance that is created that otherwise would alert an animal that something's coming versus something that's moving fast and more silently that startles them and elicits a completely different physiological response, and subsequently that results in how many calories they're burning to avoid or escape from that whole flight or flight kind of thing, and so there's some science behind that. It's good science. It's not perfect science. There's no way to say, okay, if we open a mountain bike trail here, then we have to make sure that this much noise is created in order to. It's not as perfect as that. But there's considerations
They're
that
thinking about it.
yeah, that we can at least take into consideration whenever we're designing trail systems or ensuring that there's a view shed or that otherwise animals could use just like humans. So
Francie and then Kelly, please.
Couple of quick questions. Since we have so many mountain lions in Colorado, and we have a lot of depredation from lions, are we considering lowering the harvest numbers? Or raising the harvest numbers?
So this area here,
Special management.
correct. It's part of with what CPW recognizes in our West Slope Lion Plan as a special management area. So the rest of the West Slope is managed under strict guidelines on what % of female harvest is embedded within our total harvest. The guidelines for our special management area are a little bit more lax. Really what it comes down to for lion harvest here, we see very low lion harvest. Even in the special management consideration, we really never run into reaching our cap on what we could harvest here. And a lot of that comes down to it's pretty difficult landscape to navigate. It's steep. It's heavily wooded. It's just not very conducive for a lot of these places where other mountain lion hunters see success. The other thing is we have a lot of private parcels juxtaposed to our public land parcels. So, that creates its own scenario where for trespass things and everything else, people avoid a lot of the areas around here. And so we really don't harvest as much as we probably could or maybe even should in some considerations in order to manage for a healthy population.
Great, thank you. And
Harvesting out the west end.
mountain bikes on the Crown, I'm wondering what your interaction is with BLM. I know they're probably gonna say, go for it, and do they, I can't imagine it's good for the avalanche herd, and I'm just wondering what kind of interaction you have with BLM, or what kind of sway, or...
We do work with the BLM a lot, and I will fully recognize that whether it's the BLM or the Forest Service or even the county, one of the things that we get a little bit easy is that, like, for me and my staff, we're focused on wildlife, so we are single focus. It's easy for us to stand up and say, yeah, we're, go wildlife. And we don't have to necessarily worry about, speaking ill of that mountain bike trail there, because we're not necessarily managing that mountain bike trail for those mountain bikers in many regards. However, a lot of other agencies, other organizations are charged with managing for multi-use, and they have multi-purpose objectives. So it's not as simple as going to them and saying, hey, you have to manage better for wildlife. They also have a mandate where they have to create those recreational opportunities for those publics as well. So it's just there's some nuance to some of that, and I'll say that they do engage with us, and they try to highlight areas where we can conduct recreational opportunities here. And we are trying to work with them specifically through this outdoor coalition to get them engaged and helping paint the picture on, okay, so if we're putting recreation here, are there blocks, are there parcels of land that we can set aside where we're going to kind of keep those ones less recreation focused and more habitat focused.
Beautifully diplomatic, Matt.
Kelly, and
have to take over
then
recreation.
Matt had a third
June's
subject I
finishing.
wanted him to touch on. So last question on connected landscapes.
Sure, I guess I'm wondering if the collaborative group that you're working with, Roaring Outdoor Coalition, feels like they have the opportunity to consider trail closures as part of their approach. you know, a lot of the times it's like 90% of the users flock to 10% of the trails. You know, should we be looking at taking some of them out of the inventory? You know, even if, not even just for a season, for 5 years, you know, and seeing how that helps with some management issues and looking at the trails that maybe aren't really being used by a lot of people for that type of opportunity. Do you guys feel like that is within, like, do you have the mandate to consider that, or do you need some additional leadership to say, please consider that?
I would say more the latter. I think if that is a consideration, I think it would be helpful for people in some of those influential positions to highlight that might be worth considering and at least looking at what it is. Because more often than not, you know, I think most of the other narrative that exists is actually pushing for more of whatever that is, and not necessarily taking away from that. And so I think we haven't necessarily gone down and explored what some of those options are in that capacity. That's an interesting concept, because right now it's mainly just managing for, okay, we know we're going to have to put more trails and more elk in the same place. How do we do that? And that's where we keep kind of hitting our head up against the wall. If there was a space to remove one or the other and kind of make a little bit more wiggle room, it's probably a reasonable consideration, but we haven't really heard that from most of our publics.
Well, I would just maybe that's an opportunity for this board to like get with open space and say, we would reasonably consider this type of option.
Yeah, for sure.
And the
You know,
enforcement.
this
would-
Thanks.
tomorrow's my
Yeah.
last day, so this is what I will leave.
You're
as
gonna
my
the
parting
mic drop.
ideas.
I'm all over that one.
Conscious of the fact that you had a third subject that you wanted to discuss with the board.
Yeah, so real quickly, I did want to make sure, you know, I think it would be, I wouldn't be doing my job if I came in front of this board and didn't make mention of wolves at some point. So, you know, just to provide a quick update on some things there. And when I was meeting with staff, kind of discussing the broader topic, one of the points that came up was, obviously it's been in the media, the news has picked up on things. We as an agency are not bringing more wolves into the state this winter. We have a pretty short window when it's appropriate to do so, when capture operations, when conditions are conducive for capture operations, when it's safe to do so for the animals, when we have the best chance of success in releasing them, and we're getting beyond that right now. So there was some other complications about, you know, securing permission from populations, source populations elsewhere. There's just a lot of noise in the system regarding that. But one of the topics I wanted to make mention of specific to that is, even outside of not bringing any animals into the state at all this year, Pitkin County was not going to be selected as a site for release this year. Not even a consideration. You know, we're still wading through some of the animals that we have living in the county from last year's releases, and there's both support and there's less than support in you know what we're managing as an agency there. But given that, you know, we also do have some established populations within the county, and we weren't going to disrupt some of that, you know, by complicating it unnecessarily by bringing in new animals and saying, hey, here you go, you know, now you have to find your way around what already exists in there. So Pitkin County right now was not highlighted, and reasonably, you know, under current conditions, it probably won't be highlighted in any future releases, just for that consideration that we do have some existing populations that already reside here.
Thank you.
So can I ask quickly, I'm calling them wolverines, but I think it's wolverines. How's that progressing, or?
It's definitely progressing. You know, we have staff that are specifically managing that program and are looking at wolverine reintroduction. That's another one of those legislative mandates. There's a statute that directs us to reintroduce wolverines into the state of Colorado. The nice thing that we're embracing right now is that the timeline that we are afforded is significantly longer. So we have the opportunity to do our diligence and look at some of these habitats, look at, you know, go out and reach out to some of the constituent groups and try to do it a little bit more methodically. So I think we're well on our way there. This past winter here, Dr. Bob Inman, he is our specialist that was hired on staff, and he presented, at the commission meeting here this past winter, he released our statewide plan on how we plan to reintroduce and manage wolverines. The one thing I will make note of for this commission, for the public, is that wolverines require high elevation habitats. You know, they're looking at a lot of these places that are above tree line, and Pitkin County hosts a lot of high elevation habitats. So Pitkin County, Eagle County, Summit County, you know, there's a lot of our counties around here that do host habitats that might be considered appropriate. So here over the next probably year, we're looking to utilize our local staff to ground truth some of these areas and go out there and set foot and take a look at it through that lens of, would this be an appropriate place for a wolverine to survive? What are the conflicts that might exist? How do we weigh that out?
Where would you even find wolverines to bring here? I mean, there's not very many of them left out there, and they're pretty sly.
There's not. I mean, overall, within the United States, a lot of the population, what we're looking at is probably a population of somewhere 300-ish.
I know there's
It's not a lot, yeah. What we would be proposing to manage for based on the habitat availability in the state of Colorado is probably, if we could get 100 animals, that's probably really, really, really good, optimistically, but not sure how that's going to land. Right now, they're exploring a lot of opportunities for source populations. If you just, as the crow flies, probably one of the closest places is going into Canada. They have, you know, significant populations up there, and that's probably one of the easiest places as far as, you know, just transport and minimizing the amount of time they'd have to spend in crates or otherwise.
We're going to be able to bring wolverines, but not wolves from Canada?
I don't know. That's a
That's a
question,
whole nother
way,
question.
way above my pay grade, and yeah.
I wouldn't want to be riding in that truck with a bunch of caged wolverines, so let me tell you.
There are no language restrictions, though.
Okay? It's just hard to find them too, isn't it? Because they're pretty low key until you piss them off.
Yeah.
While we have you, any other 2026 priorities the board should be aware of and the public should be aware of, or your focus in particular?
Oh man, that's a whole nother complete
Hour.
work session in itself. No, there's a we're moving forward on a lot of fronts, but those are probably some of the big ones. And if anything else comes up, you know, and is of interest to the commission, if there's any other presentations on specific topics you'd ever like me to give you guys other information items, even outside of a formal meeting here, you know, if it's just doing public presentations, just to help better inform our communities, more than happy to. And I always look to you to kind of gain the temperature and where I need to go with, you know, me and my staff on how we're engaging with the community. So I welcome any suggestions the commission has.
Appreciate the offer.
Bring us a wolverine.
You guys do a great job. We
It'd be
appreciate you.
great if you spoke to the community up here. You know, I could talk to ACES about that. They'd probably sponsor something where you come up and talk about the health of our wildlife and status of wolves. I think our population would really enjoy that up here.
All of this, all of what he presented today, I think would be very interesting to the. But you guys are great. And we love having you here.
Anything further from Matt?
No, thank you.
Matt?
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
And the kids are in college now.
Oh, they're grandparents now.
They grow up way too fast, don't they?
Agreed.
We really appreciate the visit and the information. So,
Well, thank you. I always appreciate the opportunity,
Yeah.
and been a pleasure working
Likewise.
with you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you.
yeah.
Take care.
Great.
Thanks
Thanks,
for coming
Good
up,
to see
Matt.
you. I'll let
Thank you.
Tracy know I saw you.
Perfect.
Great to see you.
Does the board need 4 minutes? Or are we ready to plow on to survey? Great. Allison Bektesh, we are ready for you. So, and I think you're being joined online by
Yes.
a surveyor,
On there.
not a civil engineer, but a surveyor.
Civil.
Different kind.
I don't get it.
Michaela says every once in a while they're old guy jokes, but it probably is an architect joke.
And I found the 2018 survey when I was
Hard
cleaning
copy,
out
of
my
course.
desk.
Oh, did you?
Jason, thanks for joining us. We understand you have a hard stop, and so we will respect that. So thanks so much for being on time.
Great, thanks so much for having me.
Yes. And then I can share my screen, right?
I accept? Setting, maybe? Said you rejoined. Oh, share screen.
A four-pass loop infested with wolverines.
Reverse. It's like,
Yeah.
they'll run faster. Well, they'll set new records.
That'd be not,
They don't attack people, I'm pretty sure.
yeah, nice try.
Because I can raise my hand, it might not be a.
Those guys are
That would be a bad place to put them. There are so many people up there in the summer.
Wolverines.
No, yeah, bad place to put wolverines because there's so many people up there.
We wouldn't have to worry about food stock for them, for the Wolverines.
You're like, it's not.
I
well, it
really
looks
liked what
different
you
every
said about
time.
BLM having to manage for so many different uses, and they only have to manage well. That was really.
Except
Nice.
aren't they thinking about throwing recreation into CPW?
I know, I did almost want to ask him
They're
about
gonna.
that, too.
I
What are
did-
they trying to do there?
I asked
we
him
got
before
to-
we started about it.
Yeah, that's what I had to say, until tomorrow when they give you a new challenge in life.
Allison and Jason, the biennial is yours.
All right, thank you, and thanks for the introduction because that was my first line. You know me, Allison Bechtesz, Strategic Communications Manager. Jason Newmeyer is the Director of Survey Research from Polco, who is our consultant on the community survey at this go-round. We are back to you today to answer some questions from our conversation in January. You do have the 2026 survey instrument in your packet. We also have updates for you on the benchmarking community questions that you asked, and we actually want to demonstrate some of that real-time reporting on the back end. So Jason's going to be able to pull up his screen and walk you through some of the ways that the data can be used by you to set some priorities moving forward. I do always like to just say the why, that we are checking in with our community. We do these surveys in order to assess satisfaction and quality of life for the people here in our county. And just want to take a moment to highlight that this year is a shift from how we've done these surveys in the past. The past 3 or 4 iterations, we've done one survey. It takes 20 to 30 minutes to fill out. We get that data in a physical packet, and then it's kind of dead for 2 years. So we've elected to go with the National Community Survey that Polco puts on as more of a springboard with an interactive dashboard on the back. As things progress throughout those 2 years, we can continue to look at the data or continue to use their tools to go in deeper on certain topics or do some more custom work for department specific. So that is a shift on how we've done the survey prior. For the sub area, we've created a map that includes the 5.
What'd she say?
Lovely, thank you. I've heard people say I could slow down in my pace when I've talked before, so I get it. We've selected a map that has the 5 commissioner districts, as well as used our planning maps and done an overlay of our urban growth boundaries and our rural remote boundaries. So we'll be able to kind of take any cross section that we want of a rural urban divide, of a commissioner district divide, of that within a district. And we've also included, question D1 in the demographics, kind of a self-selection of just your neighborhood, of more of our colloquial areas. So we'll be able to use that on the front end data as well. We did want to show you some of the longitudinal questions that we'll carry forward. So Polco did go through and look at our last 4 or 5 surveys and identified the questions that we are asking in the National Community Survey that would allow for some comparative data from all the years that we've asked these questions previously. We've always done a custom survey, so it's been a different survey every time we've thrown it out there, but it's around 30 questions in these topics that we'll be able to carry over from some of the sentiment that we've gained in the past. This was, it didn't go forward on that one. My slide now
We have
looks
storm
different.
drainage questions, but no water questions.
Ouch.
Yes.
Choked up.
Matt's presentation was much easier.
Just want to get difficult.
What's happening?
This is a map of the United States, but let me just tell you, we have about 400 comparison communities across the nation that all use this exact same survey, 150 research projects within the state of Colorado, 50 comparison counties across the nation, and 50 Colorado communities. But really, how we do our comp communities is up to us. Oh, no, it didn't go. So we do have Aspen and Glenwood Springs as some nearby neighbors, but we could say we want the Mountain West, or we want rural resorts, or we want ski towns, counties that have a ski resort in them. So we can be very, we can delineate that on our end. Jason could recommend some things right now, but that's something that we work on throughout this process for who our best comparative communities are. Stop and start again? Okay.
Can we take breaks for like 2 seconds?
2 seconds.
More than that.
Maybe 5 minutes. I'm just going to troubleshoot this.
And we're actually going to Jason's screen share in a moment, if that's it's the screen. Okay.
Yeah.
We're on break
Yeah.
for 5.
Sorry.
Sorry, Allison, I know it's hard to get
So if this was television, there'd be those vertical stripes, and it would say, we're having technical difficulties, please stand by. But this is the Board of County Commissioners meeting on Tuesday, February 10th. We are in the middle of the biennial survey, and Jason's going to rejoin us, as well as Allison. Excellent. And so welcome back.
Thank you. It doesn't look like the slides are working. I would like to turn it over to Jason, who's actually going to do a.
So we're still having technical difficulties. Please stand by.
Leave the Zoom and come back.
Just like reload the page.
Like her?
Do you want me to take us back on break?
No.
I just don't think we understand what you're asking. I can't stop the Zoom without kicking everybody out, so I don't think that's the appropriate action.
I would.
I mean, like, can you like reload the page?
I stopped share.
Yeah.
And then I started.
Have you tried that?
Mm-hmm. But I think we could do this analog.
Or transparencies, your choice.
Have you tried him sharing the screen? That can work as well.
Well, no, let's try. I do want to turn it over to Jason because I know you guys are most interested in the instrument. So I'd love for him to speak about the National Community Survey. We can see if his screen share works. If not, I do think we could have this as an analog conversation. Of course, no show and tell today. And Jason, are you hearing us?
Is he on there?
Lose the guy.
That's who she's asking if he's.
Oh, Jason, are you hearing us?
I am now, yes.
Okay, wonderful. My screen is still not sharing, but I'm wondering if we can turn it to you and see if your screen share works, and we can swap over here to the National Community Survey and some of that back-end reporting. And yours is allowed to share, so let's. The one thing I have a slide prior to this, but I hope you can still speak to it, Jason, just that overarching livability metrics that we are going for through this survey, and then showing some of this. Thank you.
Sure, that sounds great. Well, I'm glad my screen was able to be shared here. Ultimately, what was asked or what Allison had asked me to show you here today was some of the online reporting for what the NCS ultimately will look like when it's delivered to you, so you can kind of see the back end picture and we can reverse engineer from there. So what we're looking at here online right now is the NCS report for a fictitious town known as Pulco Town. We just created some data here and inserted. Anything you see that's static on the screen, like our About tab here, our Methodology tab, all of this is actually available to you in the end in a PDF packet. So you'll get a 30 to 40 page PDF of anything static. But there's also a lot of interactive components of the National Community Survey reporting as well that I'll demo here for you shortly. The slide that Allison, I think, was trying to share was kind of a honeycomb or a look at our 10 facets of community livability. The 10 facets of community livability were developed by the National Research Center in partnership with ICMA and a few of our other partners like APOR, the Alliance for Innovation, and others when the NCS was written about 25 years ago. These 10 facets of community livability are organized to try to show a holistic view of residents' overall quality of life. And also, I think maybe even more importantly, they tend to align with municipal or county departments, making it really easy for individuals who are interested in seeing the report of results to find the areas of interest to them. So in the NCS, we ask about these 10 facets of community livability, both in terms of current quality and in terms of future importance. So I know your kind of quality importance matrix that you had used in the past was important to you. So I wanted to just highlight here, I think we took a peek at this last time, but our 10 facets of community livability are listed here down the center. And you'll actually see we provide a quality importance gap analysis for each of these 10 items. Excuse me. And those areas where we are seeing Quality ahead of importance are areas where we are really exceeding the importance levels that were assigned by our residents. Areas where we have larger gaps, in this case for Polko Town, we can see 77 provided this as an essential or very important area of focus, but our overall current quality was just 61. So we see a gap there in our residents' responses, and that may be an area where we'll want to dig a little bit deeper and follow up with some of the services questions that we have on the NCS. So with that, I'll just show you the interactive dashboard here, and then maybe I'll pause and make sure that we can answer any questions about the NCS. And if we have a little time, I'd love to show you some of the other analytics and engagement tools that you have with Polko that we can use after the NCS is complete to dig deeper. But the interactive dashboard is a favorite and something that I wanted to demo here for you just briefly. This interactive dashboard actually allows you to select the area that you are interested in over on the left. Let's say we'll choose mobility again because that was our area with the largest gap. Every single item in relation to mobility on the NCS is then displayed here, including our national and our custom comparisons. And we can actually do a deep dive into any one of these items like ease of travel by car. And as we scroll down, we'll start to see our overall excellent, good, fair, poor ratings, our national benchmark, which includes your overall rank, the number of communities you're compared against, and your percentile, along with the custom breakdown. Again, as we talked about earlier, we'll set those demographic or geographic comparisons as we work into data collection. And then you actually get all of your demographic comparisons here as well, including geographic areas. So for example, here we're seeing area 1 and 2 are giving statistically significantly higher ratings than area 3 in Polko Town for ease of travel. But we also have all of our other demographic questions for which we can see these breakdowns. So older residents in Polko Town are giving higher ratings to ease of travel by car, and we can actually see the breakdown by age and by response for every single group that we have here on the National Community Survey. So again, I know we've shared the kind of static report, we've taken a look at that, but there are a lot of these interactive components on the NCS report that can be embedded directly onto your website, can be shared with policymakers or key stakeholders so they can dig into the area, again, that's most important to them. And then the last thing I'll just share here briefly is our comparisons by respondent characteristics. I know this was a really important topic when we talked last. So again, here we can select the area we're interested in. Let's again just look at mobility. And then we can see breakdowns by area. And we can compare across our 4 areas in Polko Town the overall quality of the transportation system. It seems here like areas 2 and 3 are lagging a little bit behind area 1 for that question. And as we scroll down again, we can see which areas are using public transportation more often, which areas are giving better ratings to traffic enforcement, street lighting, the entire battery of questions that we have for mobility on the NCS. So with that, maybe I'll pause here, Allison, and just turn it back to you. If there's anything else you'd like me to demo here, or if there are any questions on kind of this back end reporting that you'll be able to dig into once the data is back in, cleaned, and ready to go for you.
Can you touch more on the comparison with mountain towns, or what are the sort of data sets that are available to us? And you don't need a decision today. That's what we're going to see in the final report, I'm assuming.
Exactly.
That's exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Go ahead, Allison.
Thank you.
It's a custom benchmark. That's what we selected, and so we'll have all the nationally available data that comes out of census, that comes out of other reports, but then we get to decide who we want our comp communities to be. And so, Jason, we do have a slide. You can do geographic, but there's a lot of times that you can do something more dynamic. So maybe a community that has a similar growth rate, similar population, similar income, or some of these more regional items. So we can get very custom as to what we want that third column to be in our custom benchmark communities.
Thank you. Patricia?
You know, I think the comparables is great information to have. It's really not of importance to me. I want to know how we're doing as a community, not how we compare to Steamboat or Jackson Hole or someplace else. But
Bozeman.
No, their report's much too big to be a comparison. But I think it'll be interesting to have, but it's not, my priority is what we're getting from members of our community. But it looks like we'll have to see how it goes and if we change anything based on how we compare to another mountain community. Yeah,
And we compare to ourselves through longitudinal data, right? So we will have those 30-something questions.
I like that when we look at what we did last year and in 2018. But yeah.
Someone looked back
those
at it
are
after the first day.
My priorities, and again, just tweaking the language in our survey so it really is applicable to our community. But we're not at that point yet.
Further questions for Allison or Jason? Craig?
Sample size, and if we have trouble getting the sample size, what happens? What's the minimum sample size, I guess, would be or the optimal sample size?
We went below a 5% margin of error. The plan would be to send to about 4,000 households in our 17,000 person community in order to get the returns that we're looking for. Jason, you know the math off the top of your head. That is a way big oversend. And English and Spanish, paper and digital. It'll be open for about 4 weeks just for the people who receive something in the mail, so we know they got it at their residential address. We also have those 2 weeks afterwards that it's an open link to anybody, and our team will be promoting it so that we can start to get some sense as well of a second homeowner, of a member of the workforce who doesn't have a residential address in Pickens County. That won't be a statistically sound sample, but we'll be able to at least include them in the broad overall data package.
Well, if you're going for 4,000 households, a community of 17,000 people might only have 4,000 households or something about that, right? So it looks like we're trying to go for pretty high saturation, and how have we done in the past?
I'm not sure what you've done in the past, but what I will say is our typical response rate for Colorado communities that we've seen over the last few years is anywhere from 12 to 15% response rate. So I would anticipate we will see, I mean, we don't want to promise obviously anything, but we should have 500, 600, 700 responses across both, which gives us a margin of error well below 5%, probably closer to 3.25%. And that will give us the 95% confidence interval around all of our estimates. I'm not sure what your return rate was in the past. I can look into those reports and let you know, but that's typically what we see in Colorado.
So we're thinking around 500, a sample of 500 is what you're...
And I can share, I think that was one of the concerns that the board has voiced in the past with our prior methodology, was that we stopped at 500. And so we only achieved a 500 response rate and stopped. And so I think this is expanding that a little bit further to try and
go bigger.
Go bigger, exactly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And it's so dorky, but I haven't been saying random sample because I do want you to know that one of the things we have to do now that we've figured out those sub areas is kind of oversend to places where we probably won't get as many responses. So a rural area in a certain district might get a higher percentage of households that are being invited because we think a lower percentage will actually participate. So we want that statistically sound. We don't want it to be even across the entire county when our population isn't even across. We want it to be representative.
So you may have to work harder on the Snowmass Creek people, for instance.
And we're stamping the mail-in ones. Are they putting stamps on them, or do they have to stamp them, or do we?
Holco's going to take care of that for us.
Okay. Because that can make a difference.
And they'll
to people.
get, and the paper copy comes with a postage paid return envelope.
Thank you, because a lot of people don't.
And a crisp dollar bill.
That's
You have more presentation, I just have comments.
Please, no, I think we should focus on your questions.
It's not a question, it's
Oh,
just a comment.
great.
I really appreciate the depth of inquiry you've put into this, and I think I'm really hopeful that it's gonna give us, a depth of understanding of where people stand. I hope more than 12% of people respond. So we're told by Melissa today that 80% of employees respond to our survey, so it would be great if we could get, I don't know, 30%.
Whoa, she's going for it.
Because it's so interesting to hear what people think. And So I really appreciate the work you've put into this, Allison.
Thank you. I'm so excited as well.
So can I jump into my language issues now? I thought we talked a little bit about the column don't know versus not applicable. We were leaving it as don't know because a lot of times a lot of these things are not applicable, so they put don't know and they're like, because you don't use it, or you don't know because it doesn't apply to me, because is that discussed and we left it with don't know?
We did discuss it, Jason. I'd love your. I think it's still open to switching. It won't match, of course, all the other communities that have that exact, but
We do have some communities that will include both, either, NA/don't know, for those services, questions, I should say. At the end of the day, I think the idea, and Allison, maybe you want to hit on this, was to cast a broad net in terms of what we're going to ask questions on. And in the cover letter and the survey instrument itself would be to include services that potentially weren't provided directly by the county, but were a part of the overall quality of life of your residents. So we could put not applicable, we could put don't know, but the idea is we still want the response from residents there, even if it's not something directly provided by the county. I think we could go either way. It truly doesn't change the math for my end. We could add that if you'd like.
I don't know what the board's feeling on that might be, but I know we discussed it at a previous meeting. So it's up to the board. I just thought I'd throw it out if you want to. And then I have some other quick changes that I would like to throw out.
Keep going.
Okay, so the cleaning streets, we don't clean streets in the county. We don't have sewer. We don't supply water, but we're going to leave, we don't collect garbage.
Yep. We did discuss this, and I would say there's probably 4 questions in the NCS that we removed entirely because they were so not applicable. What we decided, in order to get a sense of if there's some demographic or geographic misses on some of the services that are adding to quality of life, whether or not we provide them. If we leave the question in, we'll find that out. But we did add this line at the top: Pickens County does not provide all the services listed. However, we are interested in your perspective. I don't know how much the board might use if people don't like their garbage pickup service, right? Because that's not what we do. It'd be interesting if there are any sort of trends or anything that we could work with our partners or, our solid waste center. We thought there might be merit in finding out any gaps in the end. So that was discussed, and I'm open to the perspective of the board here.
So, again, it does say services in Pickens County, not by Pickens County, so that's another key. The other one is I would like to, under the quality of each of the following services, down at the very bottom, overall customer service by Pickens County employees, we can cross police off of that one.
Let's do deputies, Jason. We did have a comment about the word receptionist. I think we have a lot of I think that anything in a parenthetical we can make ours.
Clean up, yeah. And there's a lot of little ones we could get really picky. We don't have a rec center. We don't. Those things. But some of them I can see where we could gain some, information like the garbage collection. But I just. Sometimes people will read it literally and say, look at what a bad job you're doing, but from this column, and we'd have to go through and say, well, we don't really do this, and we don't, then why did you ask me? So we have people that go through the results of these with a fine-tooth comb. Not a lot of people, but some people do, and pay attention. If they're going to take the time to fill it out, they want to see what the results are. So, thank you. But I don't know what you guys want to do with NA or don't know. I don't know if it's applicable or not.
Jason, do you have final comments? I know you were on a time crunch.
No, I'll just continue to answer any questions that you might have here. And Allison, if there's anything else, I have about 13 more minutes.
Okay.
So you've got me for what you need. Yeah.
Thank you. Did the board have a strong view on NA versus don't know?
I think if you can fit it, might as well stick it in there, and then it just gives you a little.
Put both, don't know or not applicable. If you're doing that elsewhere, that might make it more
Because someone
comparable.
could say, you know, maybe they don't interact with the sheriffs, so they don't know. But
Yeah.
it's definitely still applicable, right?
Jason, did we just ruin the statistical significance of the overall survey? I saw the head shake go side to side.
It's different if we add a whole nother column, right? Because now we have a fifth option. If we want to do like don't know / not applicable, I don't see why why that would be an issue. I'd have to think a little bit more about adding another column and having a fifth option.
We could just leave the don't know, but I know we had discussed it, so,
Thank you for bringing that back up. Yeah.
yeah. Or we could put not applicable.
Anything further for Jason or Allison?
We didn't really make a decision on that.
The one last
We made a
time.
decision, which is no fifth column.
So we're gonna put NA and don't know in the same column, or are we gonna use don't know, or are we gonna use NA?
I will turn back to the statisticians and the economists in the room.
I think it's a little bit of splitting hairs, but if there is a want to put not applicable, I think we certainly could change it. But at the end of the day, I think if somebody puts don't know, I think we can assume it's not applicable. Maybe the reverse would be less likely. But again, open to whatever you want to do with that. Adding the fifth column does make it a little trickier. I'll have to think that one through though.
Let's just leave don't know out.
Okay. The final slide was just the timeline. So it'll take about 2 weeks to get materials together, the back end, making sure we have enough residential addresses and getting it sent out. Then the invitation only essentially period is open for a month, another 2 weeks with the full community and a link. So it's a 6-week survey period. It takes about another month to get the reporting back. We'll want to all look at the reporting well before a presentation, so you've had time to digest it and come with real questions, but we'll have Polko back to present the findings to you as well.
BOCC cover letter, who's writing it? Are we having any input
You know,
on that?
we have a form letter that we can edit however we want, and it's typically addressed from the chair, so I was going to work directly with you on that, Jeffrey.
I'd like to see it.
Perfect.
I will add that to my list of letters, including the Wildfire Resiliency Code Board that's going into the op-eds, so yes.
Prolific writer.
I'd like to see the cover letter of our signatures on it.
Thank you so much.
Likewise. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Interim county manager.
I'm gonna sit by Melissa on this one.
Oh, thanks.
Excellent.
Don't leave me hanging over here. I'm gonna join as a.
And just in advance, Mr. Postman is going to see Freddie the Fixer, so he may, he's not being rude, he's leaving, you know.
I don't know if we'll need the full 30 minutes.
Excellent.
Good afternoon, Interim County Manager Kara Silbernagel.
And Melissa Knight, Director of Human Resources and Risk Management.
Great. So we just wanted to run through for the board and also for the public a review of the candidate or the applicants for the District 2 County Commissioner vacancy. We did receive applications closed on Friday, February 6th, and then we received, after reviewing eligibility with the Clerk and Recorder's Office, we've confirmed 10 eligible applicants, and we did repost the agenda yesterday for the public to be able to review who those candidates are and their applications for the public and for the commissioners. So that was posted yesterday. We do have 10, as I said, candidates, and we have set aside 4 hours currently for next Tuesday, February 17th, for interviews of those candidates, and just wanted to walk through with all of you the process for interviewing those candidates next week. Anything before we jump in? Okay. So based on, as I said, we have currently 4 hours, roughly 4 hours reserved. I'll get into that in detail. We had originally just slotted those 4 hours, not sure of how many applicants we would get. So with that, what we're recommending is that you can use having roughly 15 minutes for each applicant. And so we would do a group of applicants in the first session, which would be 1 to 2:30. And then that would be 5 applicants, and then another round of interviews from 2:45, or sorry, 2:30 to 3:45. And then that would allow a 15-minute break for the commissioners in between, and then a break at the end. Now, in understanding there's a lot of time and a lot of questions, we have also discussed setting aside time at that 4 o'clock hour and revising the agenda so that if there's any outstanding questions, or if you all would want to bring any potential applicants back for clarifying questions, we could set aside 30 to 45 minutes from 4 to 4:30 or 4:45 in case you wanted to bring back for additional questions or clarifications.
Do you have P&Z starting at 4:30 that evening?
P&Z is not starting at 4:30, and I've already communicated to ComDev staff about potentially finding a different room for P&Z if you all wanted to go beyond 5 o'clock.
Okay, thank you. Patty?
So we're gonna ask the candidates, we're gonna let the candidates know what time for their interviews. And then we're gonna ask them to possibly be available if the board has questions or further information they might want to get. So we need a contact phone number where the candidates might be and let them know what the time frame is, just in case there's some clarification that we need. Okay, great.
And as such, the 17th just is set up for interviews only. I don't think we have not set up discussion time, that would be set for the meeting on the 26th for your first read-in resolution.
Thank you.
Any?
So we're gonna discuss and decide in the same day. Correct?
For first read, yep, and then
On
second
the
reading.
26th.
Pass a resolution.
For first reading, and then set for second reading. And you will be accepting public comment during the first reading.
And who made that decision?
On Thursday, that Thursday, we're going to be open for public
We
comment?
just discussed opening it for public comment.
Both hearings have public comment, both the.
I thought that the first one was like, obviously open to the public, but not like broadcast.
It's a first reading and someone agreed to allow public comment. I don't know who agreed to that.
I think the advice from council was that this is a public process and that the open meetings law basically favored taking public comment both at first and second read. And so it was advice from council at the time.
That is new to me.
We can confirm with Mr. Neely.
And we can confirm and follow up on when you would like to take public comment. The way that the schedule is set up is that you have first reading on February 26th, second reading the morning of March 3rd, with oath of office set for March 3rd at noon.
And it's currently noticed as public comment will be taken on the 26th.
I'm going to check with council on that because generally public comment on a first reading is up to the discretion of the chairman of the board. So.
But if people want to come in and say, be an advocate for a candidate and talk, they have to come in the first reading because the second reading is too late.
Correct.
It's the same day, the second reading is the same day that we swear them in and stuff, so.
We have to pass the resolution on second reading on the 3rd.
Correct.
And swear them in.
Yeah.
So if you're an advocate and you want to come in and talk, or maybe the opposite of an advocate, whatever that
If the
word
board's
is.
fine with it, it's the first I've heard that we have to have public comment on a first reading.
Let me clarify, it's not you do not have to. I think it is the discretion of the board. You do have to have a public comment at some point in a 2-read resolution. Discretion of the board of if you want to accept public comment during
On
first
both
reading,
readings.
because of exactly as Francie outlined, the timeline of having public comment only at the second reading versus taking at the first reading, given the tight timeline you
That's
have.
what we normally do on resolutions. We take public comment on the second reading. So we're deviating from that, and I'm okay if it's, the board has decided that. But we're still taking public comment on both readings.
Yes.
So people could still come in on the second reading and give public comment.
The board has not decided, so let's
No, I'm just
decide.
saying.
Francie, can you speak closer to your mic?
Yes.
But I understand your point. It's just, we're gonna take it both hearings?
So we can table the public comment for future agendas.
If the board's okay with it,
It's a public process. I think we should be transparent as we can and inclusive as we can, because it's such a quick way of bringing in a public official.
it's kind of different than most of our resolutions.
This is a different situation too.
That's what I'm saying.
I'll just state for the record that I'm not weighing in on any of this, as the prerogative is with the 4 board members, and I'm sitting here politely waiting for the rest of the
Trying to be
agenda.
invisible.
Again, I think the effort by the board was to err on the side of openness and take public comment. Again, I think that was the advice from legal counsel as well.
Is your mic on? I could hear them. I didn't know if your mic was on.
It's on.
It's on.
It's on.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay,
so
moving right
just
along.
to review for, do you wanna
Yeah.
review just for the public as well? Oh, we can just read through them.
Okay.
It is posted in the packet, but the 10 applicants are, and apologize to anyone if I have the names incorrectly, is Andorra Renee, Megan Ruby, Thomas Egan, Edward Mann, Emily Colby, Scott Woolley, Chris Mangas, Max Ben Hamu, Katie Frisch, and Charles Tarver. So we will, following this meeting, send an email out to all of the applicants to schedule those timeframes based on what we just discussed here with the board.
And there was clarity on the 10th candidate and residents.
Seems like it, there must be.
Yes, they've been vetted.
Thank you.
Thanks, ladies.
Thank you.
All right,
Moving right along.
thank
Well
you.
done.
Thank you. Well, that was quick.
Faster than we thought.
Any questions on future agendas now that we sort of did future agendas?
I have one addition.
Please.
On Wednesday, the 25th of February, I will not be here. Francie, are you going away in March?
I'm going from the 21st to the 28th, and I'm going to probably zoom in on for our Wednesday regular meeting.
So it's the end of March? Or the end of
Towards the
February?
end of March, yeah.
Okay, I didn't know if it was
So
sooner.
Patty's out on the 25th.
And the 24th, but that's already on our calendars.
I think we did catch that at,
Yeah, we did.
It wasn't on here.
and
Yeah.
then
Thank you.
on the 17th, or sorry, the 17th, did you just change this to 4 hours?
So I'd like a clarification from the board on that. So we will stick with the, right now we have reserved 1 to 3:45 with a break until 4 o'clock. That all remains the same. What I would like clarification from the board is, do you want to reserve 30 minutes or 45, which would push us to roughly 5 o'clock or 5:05 as a hold time for bringing any potential applicants back for clarifications?
Maybe 45, but we might not need it. I mean,
So we can it's really up to you all. We can, everything else we're able to push back, and just want to make sure reserving the time as appropriate.
I want to answer for the board, but it sounds like we're pushing back the legislative update.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so have a break and then come back in for any follow-up questions.
Yep, and then we would push legislative update, open discussion, and future agendas to the last
Perfect.
bit of the meeting.
Whoa.
While we have everyone, we might as well.
Okay. So
Not the only
clarification, would you all like 30 minutes or 45 minutes?
I don't care, whatever the board wants.
Okay. We
You
will,
are the board.
Whatever
Okay, then
those
I'll
two
make
are.
the decision and you guys don't have anything to say
40
about it if I'm the
45, and we
board.
could always truncate it and
Okay.
move, Levi will be in the wings.
Yep.
I'd rather have ample time and not feel rushed than try to plow through 10 additional questions in 30 minutes.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Anything further, future agendas?
Just clarificate or for the board, in March 3rd, 10th, and 17th, P&Z will be having public hearings on Vision 2050 and comp plan, and so P&Z is willing to meet earlier and has requested if they could use this room beginning at 4:30. Right now, all of our agendas accommodate that, and so we would be adjourning at 4:15 on March 3rd, March 10th, and March 17th.
So we're still showing a conflict on the 10th, which has to be adjusted.
Yep, I've adjusted
and
the 10th.
And the 17th, okay.
Now, we get thrown out of our room all the time, so.
Those
That's
are my
everything.
items for future agendas.
Just
Excellent.
P&Z wants to start early or something, or?
3 comp plan discussions.
This somewhat goes back to when we brought forward their, capacity for all these big items coming forward. P&Z has agreed to try and meet longer for comp plan to get through that, to leave room for the other big items coming forward in April.
Excellent. Board open discussion. Freddie the Fixer.
I'm elsewhere. I gotta go. Sorry. If that's okay. Thank you for getting us out of here so quickly.
Kelly McNicholas Curry, your second to last open discussion.
Please join me in the morning from 10 to 11:30 for refreshments and cake in the hallway.
Excellent.
And then you're staying for the
Try
meeting.
to be here by
And
then.
then I'm staying for the meeting. I am gonna try to leave around 4:30 if we're not done.
And then you're driving away the next day.
So while Greg is packing up, the state wildlife crossing bill has not proceeded. They're still looking for funding sources from the governor's office. And so we don't know this. We don't know if that will actually go into committee.
It's gonna go to committee or not.
Because
Well, it's not behind yet.
it's got a fiscal note. Yeah.
I have one additional.
Please.
For the board, coming from Charlotte. So we're seeking some clarification for the board regarding the AAB renewal. We have boards that when members renew that it's either an automatic renewal or it comes back before the board. We don't apply that to all citizens board. The board at their discretion has identified if that comes back up before the board or if it's an automatic. So currently, the policy of the board is anyone for P&Z, Healthy Rivers and Streams, Open Space and Trails, APSHA, and Board of Health. That renewal is not automatic. It must come back before the board. And so when we established the AAB, we did not clarify that. And so I think Charlotte's looking for some clarification from the board of if you would, and we have 2 members that are currently up, if you would like to see that renewal come back through the board.
I'm looking at Kelly then. Francie,
Do I have to respond right now?
does
I
anyone
don't know
have a
who they
strong
are. I don't know
view?
who they are, and can we do it
No opinion.
person
presently.
specific if there's been
The
issues?
2 members that are up are Howie Mallory and Bruce Gordon.
And so,
The question is, do you want to renew them or is it automatic like
Yeah.
other?
Basically, the question is it an automatic renewal or would you like to have them apply and come back before the board?
So
I propose
scratch,
an
kinda?
automatic renewal.
the
Automatic.
advantage of hearing from Bruce and Howie would be their experiences over the past couple of years. And given that we don't have close contact with the AAB in terms of sitting regularly at their meetings, it's nice to have them check in. That's one man's view.
And if we put it out there, is there anybody else who might want to apply for that spot? Then we would be interviewing that person, so.
It'd have to be open then if we,
Yeah.
oh, dreadful.
I just seem to make our lives a little easier and renew them. They're both solid. We haven't heard, nobody's on probation. They show up at the meetings. They've been informed. I'm happy to renew them. If they want to drop off, that's another thing.
But if we automatically renew them, do we not have to post it and see if there's anybody else who's interested?
Why don't I get a little bit more clarification from Charlotte and come back to you? Because I do think you all have a set policy on some pretty high-level critical boards, P&Z, open space, healthy rivers, it's a policy. So an AAB's, not that all the boards are obviously very critical, but the topic du jour these days. So I'll get more information from Charlotte. And
Yeah, I'd just like to see if we have to put it out there, and if nobody applies, then we can we'll just clarify that.
Okay.
There's,
I'm not sure.
there's also the benefit to the applicant of getting to check in with the board and describing their experiences of past. So it's mutually beneficial. I think having been renewed a couple times on the citizen board, it's nice going in front of the BOCC because you do get to share your experiences and have questions from the board members. So
We can ask them
given
to
the
come in.
profile of the AAB, my inclination would be that they would come back in front of us. Other people may feel differently.
I'll go with the chair's discretion, and I'm thinking they'll come back in front of us anyway. We can ask them to come in and talk to us anyway, but if that works.
I'll get clarification from Charlotte on process as far as
Yeah, if we
opening
have
up or
to
not.
open it up anyway, then
and
we should interview
and
everybody.
otherwise move forward.
I mean, the board would likely renew both Bruce and Howie, but again, there's an opportunity, I'm repeating, for the board to just check in.
Yes, you are.
Yeah,
We don't know, there might be another
I'm
candidate
blonde.
that comes forward that's better, we don't
might
know
like
that.
somebody better.
I would at this point adjourn the meeting 36 minutes early unless there's any
Thank you.
further business of the board.
Well done.
We're adjourned.
The end.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Andorra.
I'm gonna go home and make a cake for Kelly.
I have a meeting.
What kind are you making?
Oh, I feel you're leaving early. I was gonna do our cake.
I scheduled a meeting tomorrow morning, I'm trying to reschedule it because I didn't know we were having a party at 10 o'clock.
Because